We're talking to J.R. Smith today. J.R. Smith has been a CEO of a company on the stock exchange in the US on the NASDAQ. He listed his company, AVG, the antivirus company, on the stock exchange and with a valuation of $1 billion. A lot of people made a lot of money during that time, and but JR is kind of like a curveball in a way that, you know, if you look at his education and his CV, you would never have imagined that he would be listing a company on the stock exchange in America, and especially a company that is from Prague in the Czech Republic. He was born in Seattle, part American Indian, part German, part French, part Irish, a total mix. Never really did anything close to business. He educated himself as a expert in hospitality and culinary, but his path has been interesting. He's always been involved in music. He was DJing in Seattle and around. He was there when the Grunge, Alice in Chains, Pearl Jam, Nirvana, all that, Soundgarden started. Saw a lot of those bands playing in small clubs. And he spent 12 years after college, after finishing that culinary thingy, just DJing and promoting clubs and rave parties and stuff like that. And then somehow this guy ends up being a CEO of one of the biggest antivirus companies in the world. He grew it tremendously from 100 people to 800 people. It's a crazy story, actually. But then when he left that, he obviously had some money and some time that he hadn't had before, at least the time. And he started making music because he always wanted to make music. And he's made an album. He's releasing the songs one by one this year and next. And the band is called Adams Traktor with a K. The tractor is with a K. Adam is just with no K. And it's interesting. He's been working with some world-class musicians. He's been getting really, really positive reviews. People are talking about that. They don't understand why his band isn't huge and stuff like that. So it's a very, very interesting story. He kind of, I don't know, you can say he lives his life backwards, because most people start out in a band and then become CEO later. But he became a CEO first and then he started the band. The sponsors, guys, that's Alfred Jobs, alfred.cz, where you can find thousands of jobs all over the Czech Republic and Slovakia, available in English, Czech and Slovak language, and Russian. And easy to use. There's an app also in the App Store, Alfred Jobs in the App Store, and no strings attached. Just, browse jobs, apply for jobs. You're 100% anonymous and it's free to use. And the Oat Bar Prague on Cypher Tower 21 in Žižkov. Very cozy, very nice, and amazing food. Oatmeals made out of oats that you can't find anywhere else. And skyr, the Icelandic dairy product from an Icelandic recipe made by the Oat Bar, produced by an organic farm. And great stuff. Amazing breakfast, brunch, lunch, afternoon snacks, healthy goodies. Everything is made in the Oat Bar. There is no pre-production anywhere else, no shortcuts, no nasties. And great coffee, amazing service, and home delivery as well on Volt and Bolt. Check it out, guys. And if you're listening, what a comment. You're obviously listening. Follow the show, and on Apple Podcast, you can actually review it. You can give it 5 stars. There is no possibility to give it fewer than 5 stars, unfortunately. And that would help. And share this. Thank you.
Teach me how to bleed. Break the heart that needs from what you have, what you desire. Kill the pain that is. Hide from all you fear. Close your eyes, just come inside.
Okay, I have you here, J.R. Smith. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
You can't have anyone called JR on a podcast without asking who shot JR. Have you ever heard this before?
No, you're actually the first one that's is just completely novel.
Yeah. For those of you who were not born early in the last century, then JR was the main figure in a TV series called Dallas, which was a legendary show. You watched Dallas, I guess.
I think I was too young. I
Too young?
It was quite famous, and became quite famous in Europe even after it was in the U.S. And so when I came here in '97, that's all I got. Oh, JR from Dallas.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, never heard that before. But store clerks, like everyone.
Really? Yeah, maybe actually when you say it, I can actually imagine that it was old when it got to Europe, because thinking back on the whole, I don't know, clothing, fashion, and everything in that show was not necessarily from the time when I watched it.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
what does your name, JR? What's JR? John Roberts?
Yeah, I get accused of that a lot, but it is actually just my first name, JR. And my mother liked initials. I had some cousins that would go by their initials, like JP, etc. And so when I was born, she liked it, and so she just named me JR. So on my birth certificate, it says JR, capital J, capital R.
Oh, that's cool. Is that common or?
No, it's pretty uncommon. Although even when I was in high school, I had two other guys that were also named JR, but it was their initials.
Yeah. But
they went by JR. But nobody. That's a very odd first name.
Wow. And both fit, because if the R would be small, then you would be like a junior.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've got JR, very unusual first name, and Smith, which is probably the most common last name on the planet.
Yeah.
Right? So.
Okay, that's a good mix though. JR, what are you? Why are you here? What are you?
Yeah, that's a tough question, because I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a technologist, I'm a musician. I've got a couple startups. I've always had a couple startups, it seems like. So it's hard for me to say, what are you? You know. And now I'm also a little bit in venture capital as well. So yeah, it's a long story. I just believe in doing anything and everything that you're passionate about. It doesn't matter how old you are. So that journey just keeps going and going and going. And lots of, as we'll discuss, I've done a lot of different things throughout, from age 10 till now. But
you do have, I mean, like, let's say your face to the public is through your band.
Yeah. My band, Adams Traktor. Also through a venture firm that I work with as well, a little bit. Do a lot of content for them around cybersecurity, growing companies, etc.
And you did books on that topic as well, right? You wrote some books.
Yeah, I've written a book called Wide Open Privacy, which is about privacy, because as we're evolving in time, privacy is becoming less and less important. People are always trying to track you and know everything about you. We can talk about this for hours. And so I'm a big advocate of privacy and cybersecurity, and that's what I've been doing for the last 20 years as far as like hardcore occupation. So yeah, that's a big one.
But you, as I said, I mean, like, yeah, if I look at for you on Instagram, I will find you in Adams Traktor, the band. I won't find you as the cybersecurity guy, right?
Yeah, LinkedIn, you'll see the cybersecurity, but on Instagram.
So it's business on LinkedIn, rock on Instagram.
Exactly.
And why is Adams Traktor? Why is that name of your band? I'm just always been curious about that.
Yeah, it's a short story, and it's not as deep as I'd like it to be. So if I tell the truth, it's a few guys. Yeah, it's a few guys sitting in the backyard, barbecuing with their families and chatting. And one of the neighbors said, "Hey, have you seen the size of Adams Traktor?" And meaning, because it's basically a riding lawnmower. So they were calling anything that you ride or that does yard work a tractor. Whereas I think conventionally a tractor's in the field plowing, and they're big, on a farm. And they're huge. Now they're quite advanced and technologically they're amazing. But I always think of the big old tractor, like your grandpa or your great grandpa had. And so Gunnar and I, your friend and fellow friend from Iceland, looked at each other and said, "Man, that is a great band name." And that's it. Adams Traktor came. It has no biblical connotation. It has no farming, connotation at all. It's
Not
just
a country
two
band.
words that sound really good together. As we'll talk about, I grew up in Seattle, and it just sounded like a great band name from the 90s.
Yeah.
So that was it. That simple.
Actually, that's So you're telling me for the first time that the guy that helped you inventing this name is actually the guy that connected us.
Yes.
And you claim that we met at the grill party in his place, and I claim that we met at an Alice in Chains concert in Prague.
yes.
So we have lived
with
in two
the same
different
guy in the middle.
Yeah,
With
the same guy in the middle.
though.
He's the common
Yeah.
point in the story. So
Gunnar.
yeah.
What is his real name?
Gunnar Egill.
Egill. Yeah.
It's a very complicated, like any Icelandic name. Nobody can pronounce it except. But they probably should have named him G.E. Gunnar Egill, like G.E. Smith. Would have been easier.
Smith.
Anyway, yeah. So I wanted to have you here today because to talk a little bit about your journey. It's quite an interesting thing. I mean, as you mentioned, you're born back in Seattle in the U.S. and then you made your way somehow through very random decisions and career moves into Prague, to the Czech Republic, where you live today. And then, you did some interesting stuff there business-wise, but then, you turned your focus back to the passion, which was music. And so I wanted to kind of talk about all of this stuff today with you. But if we go back, as you said, or I said as well, that you're born in Seattle, and that's on the West Coast, kind of.
Yeah. I was actually born in Olympia, which is about a little over an hour south of Seattle. So I grew up there, and then I lived in Seattle for 14 years before coming to Europe. Yeah, so I'm from the Pacific Northwest, Seattle area, and then living there. Yeah.
And what's different about that area than if you take, I don't know, like New York or East Coast, or, I mean, is it more nature?
Yeah, you're in, I guess we're known for the rain, but it's also with the rain comes the beauty, right? You've got the North Cascades running up and down the coast, just inland. So you've got skiing, you've got mountain climbing, and then you have the sea for sailing, swimming, whatever it is you like to do. So there's a lot of everything, and you get decent seasons, but nothing's extreme, and you do get a fair amount of rain. However, it's a lot less than we talk about, because we don't.
You grow apples there.
Lots of apples on the eastern side of the state, which is a lot hotter.
Yeah.
So once you go east inland, then you cross the North Cascades, and then it's hot. It's like the summers are baking. They've got farming, wine production, everything, because the temperature is completely different. Long, hot summers as opposed to kind of short, rainy summers on the West Coast.
And what kind of people are you from? I mean, what was it a big family or?
Yeah. Well, a mix, like most Americans, So I've got Irish on my mom's side, French on my mom's side, on my father's side, American Indian, and have 3 sisters, and so it's an interesting upbringing. You've got the French, the Irish, a little bit of mix, and then mixed with the American Indian. Growing up. That was always interesting.
And how is that native or the American Indian? How is that like? Is that, I don't know? Is that like visible somehow in? If you look back at your family, can you see that somehow? Like, are there some traditions or some habits or cultural things? Yeah,
I mean, through my dad, I learned lots of lessons. You learn. About the culture itself. But to be super clear, we didn't ever live on the reservation. My father had left that when he was like 15, had gone to university on athletic scholarships, and had a whole life outside of that. But although he still worked with the Indian community, did a lot of amazing things defending Indian rights in the United States, to this day is still highly involved in that. And so I got to see, I guess growing up, there was a great example of someone who, when they were passionate about something, they just went for it. They did things that nobody else had done or could do just through pure belief. And they say that a lot about entrepreneurs. They can will things to happen. because they just so believe in it and they make it happen, hell or high water. And that he was a lot like that with the tribal communities and business. Started tons of businesses, whether it was from a gas station to a golf resort to a casino to a fisheries, the Northwest Indian Fisheries Commission, to like huge things that transpired that changed a lot of people's lives. So that was, I guess, probably one of the most impactful things I got to see, and was probably still part of the reason I was able to jump around and be an entrepreneur.
But from a, I don't know, I mean from a like a family and tradition and food perspective or something like this, is there like a American Indian, I don't know, it's cuisine or do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I do. A lot of the type of baking and cooking on the campfire or underground with the stones and things like that, which are pretty common throughout the Pacific Northwest and the United States, really.
But from that influence, then,
but nothing that was like we did on a consistent basis. Potatoes and corn and all that, but that's part of their gift to the American lifestyle. There's a great book called Indian Giver that really goes through all the influences and foods and culture and things that the American Indian gave to the American culture that gets highly overlooked. And there's plenty of other things like that too. So I guess we could always appreciate it because it was there. And I think if people are really awake, but that was a nation or a culture that was pretty much 98% extinct, right? So even though the settlers, so to speak, the white guys tried to completely annihilate the American Indian, they did survive, and it was pretty hard. And that now today it's a whole nother topic, how they're coming back. They're buying back the reservations. They've got thriving businesses, and they're becoming powerful, very powerful again, which I applaud. Couldn't be prouder. And my dad's been a big part of that. So, that's always something in the back of your mind.
But is this celebrated? I mean, did you celebrate those roots in your household? I mean, like, was it like, I don't know, or people just don't care because, America is such a melting pot. I mean, like you say, on your mom's side, you have French and Irish,
German,
and German as well. I mean, that's three cultures already there. And does it actually matter? I mean, when you're born in Olympia, south of or close to Seattle, do people actually care about this?
They do, especially when I was younger, because maybe the gap and people's awareness has increased and the gap's gotten a little smaller, but it's still there today. And it was really there back then. There was a lot of prejudices, out there. And I think I couldn't even imagine, how that would be growing up, for my dad. But he always, kept a stiff upper lip. It helps that he's 6'5" and 240 pounds, and you want to fuck with him? Well, probably not really, right? So that was probably helpful. But at the end of the day, he was always incredibly mature about it. Didn't let it impact our lives at all. So it was great growing up. He was always around. He was, and we did understand because all of our relatives on his side, we knew them all. They're very close. And so you saw the influences, whether intentionally or unintentionally. And as a kid growing up and being around as much as we were, it was just, that's what you thought life was. So you can't really say, oh, this is unusual or not unusual. I just remember.
Yeah, it was just the reality that you were in somehow.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess one of the main things I also take away, other than the just drive and the entrepreneurship, is really just that calm, that like you're on this planet, you're part of an ecosystem. So I remember as a child going down to the river and wanting to jump in the water and climb the trees and everything, but it was always, you can, but you have to be quiet. You can't scream and yell and act like hooligans. You have to respect the spirits and the people around you and whatever's around you, what's part of this ecosystem. And so it was never like sat down and you were told this. It was just implied.
It's there, yeah.
Yeah, like, hey, you're part of this ecosystem and you need to respect it. And so don't run around like a maniac and be quiet and have fun, The religions were very different, the Shaker Church and stuff, which we didn't really get exposed to much at all. But you just knew it was there.
Yeah. It's kind of like, I mean, I know it's different, but still, I mean, it's the Native Americans or the American Indian, they very much lived in harmony with their environment. When you read books about their culture and history, it's very much about never overdoing anything. They never, I don't know, they appreciated what they had, so they would never take advantage of it. And I don't know, they probably didn't have capitalism in their culture, you know, like they never exploited anything. But it actually, when you're saying this, it kind of makes me think back to Iceland, because as a kid I used to work in a farm, and it was very much the same, you know, respect the land, respect the animals, respect the nature and the water and everything, because it's this is what keeps us alive. This is, you know, this is how we can function here, you know?
Yeah.
And you can't go too far, because then you're going to ruin it, you know?
Yeah, and you are where we are today.
Yeah.
With climate change and global warming. And
Yeah, I mean,
But-
it's obvious that, you know, like, maybe we have taken certain things too far, you know, but we'll see. But you said, so you had 2 sisters.
Yeah.
You 3 kids.
Yeah.
And they're older than you, or?
They're both younger. One is 5 years younger, and one is about 30 years younger. I was, well, no, maybe not 30, maybe 25, because she was born when I was in college. So one sister's 5 years younger. She's an ear, throat, and nose specialist out of New York, and my youngest sister is a dentist.
And so they're both doctors?
Yeah.
Or, medical
Yeah.
experts.
And married to doctors, I think, too. I don't know. Can't remember.
And so you were you supposed to become a doctor as a
No. I never knew what I wanted to do when I grew up. To this day, I don't exactly know. So no, I was I did a lot of different things growing up, and whether from the very beginning to where I am today, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But I didn't have that compass that some people have.
There was no pressure on you to become anything specific or do anything specific.
No, I think it was more do something, make up your mind, and then do it well. Right. So there was no pressure, to become a lawyer or a doctor.
And were you a good kid? Well behaved?
No. Up until like 3rd grade, I was a holy terror. I had all those things that children have when they're like hyperactive and they can't focus and they just run around doing crazy stuff and never listening. I was probably the poster child for that until I was in like the 2nd or 3rd grade. Like I think I held the record for being sent to the principal's office in the 1st grade.
So that's school. When you're 6,
like
7.
Yeah. But there was no malice there. And they didn't put me on any drugs or anything. You just outgrew it. I'm still a little bit high strung, but that's a whole different level, right? And I know so many guys now that were put on Ritalin and put on all these drugs, and they're still coming down off it, looking for alternatives, and wondered, why did I feel high every day when I went to school? Because of these drugs doctors were prescribing to keep them calm, and it just space them out and make them docile.
And that was never, in your case, never even considered.
No, not sure if they even knew of it, but I think my parents would not have allowed it anyway. Like, he's a kid, he's going to grow out of it. Right? If he doesn't, he'll end up in prison. Well, okay, you can control him there, right? But of course, I outgrew it.
But in American culture, I mean, in general, you have a huge tendency to use medicine. I mean, chemical medicine.
Yeah, well beyond belief, really. Yeah, it's so funny that they never look at your food and what you put into your body as maybe being a cause of some of the things that you're doing or some of the reactions you're having or the hyperactivity. And it isn't until they've given you every drug on the planet to try to remedy the problem that they go back to, it's food, or it's, it can be
lifestyle
chemical, but it can be chemical imbalances, but oftentimes it's just what you eat. It's what you put in your body. So can't say that all the time, but it's unlike Europe, and especially the like East, like India and Bhutan and areas like that, where they look at your food as your medicine, and they're looking at preventing problems before they happen, as opposed to, this is your problem, so take these, here's 7 prescriptions, you can just put them on your bathroom counter, I want you to take 2 of those every day, and then you find you're just, you're a nutcase after that.
And you're fucking up your kidneys and liver and everything, stomach and whatever.
Not only the sun will need to rise, you'll be the one who...
And what about music, JR? I mean, like when I was looking through your bio, let's say, I can see that there's always somehow been involved in music. Was that something that you got from home?
Yeah, my parents were always really supportive and wanted you to learn something musically. It was generally in the form of a musical instrument. My father is a great singer, natural, just can belt out, you name it. It's just like Sinatra or even a modern pop song, and it just sounds like he's been singing his whole life. My sister inherited that. She's got a great voice as well. I less so. I have to work a lot harder. But that started like in elementary school with just symphonic band playing the trumpet, and then going into junior high and then high school. From the time I was a freshman, I was in the jazz band. So learning a lot of theory, a lot of jazz. I was never any good at it. I'm not even sure. I barely learned how to read music. I did everything by ear. I could just fake my way through it. I didn't know jack about music theory, but I could fake it because I had a good ear, right? And so some people have good theory and a good ear, and they practice and they're great at it. And some can do both. Some can do just the theory, and they know the notes. Other people can just hear it in their ear. It's nice to have a little bit of both, but I never had the latter. So,
and that's always on a trumpet, or
I always played the trumpet, but also in high school, me and my friend Jeff, we got into guitars. So he had a early 70s Gibson Les Paul, black, awesome. I had a believe it or not, an Ibanez double neck because I love Jimmy Page. That lasted about a month, and then I traded it in for, I think, an Ibanez hollow body because it's just completely impractical to have
a
this
double neck
guitar. And you're just jamming. So we had a lot of fun. Our parents used to yell at us a lot because the music was too loud.
And why did you? I mean, what was it about music that you liked? I mean, what was that?
Just the creative nature of it, right? It's just music is meditation, right? It's you have to focus on one thing. And you practice it until it sounds really good. Yeah. Back then it was every kid knew how to play Stairway to Heaven. And I think in the 80s or 90s, it was Guns N' Roses, some tune by Guns N' Roses, right? So there's always the anthems that you learned back there. And so that just was, I think, an early form of meditation, really, and inspiration and creativity.
And I guess also a great way to meet girls.
Yeah. I never thought about that then. I was like 9.
But but later on, when you're 13, 14, it must be great to have a band. Or
we never made it that far. Well, in the band, yeah. So it's the opposite for us because we were in the jazz band.
Yeah,
that's about as unsexy as it gets. Yeah, like, hey, those guys can do those weird solos that you get tired of in about 25 seconds because it's just all notes and like, great, you know how to do scales. Yeah, that's me. But the guys but there were some guys in the jazz band that were bass players, drummers, and guitarists that then had their own bands. I guess the most notable was Barrett Martin from the Screaming Trees. He played in the jazz band, played drums with us, and he was this, young kid and really talented, but picked it up there and learned it and was so good at it. He just devoured it, and he's still a professional percussionist. He's a doctorate in percussion, I think, maybe a little bit like Neil Peart from Rush. But he, if you go follow him now, he's just working with everybody under the sun and just doing albums and art.
And he played on that famous song with Screaming Trees. I nearly
lost you. Yeah, he's in the video. You. Yeah, Barrett Martin. Wow. Follow Barrett.
Oh, that's cool.
If you can, he's on Instagram.
Yeah, and but was there ever an option that music would become like you would go and study it, or that would be the thing?
It's funny. It never even occurred to me to study music like out of high school. So I'll just go get a business degree, do whatever you need to do. So it never
get a real job.
Yeah, get a real job. But during college, I ran into this guy named Todd Robbins, TR, and he could mix music. Like he had a little. He had started a little club in Pullman, Washington called Panic City, and I was kind of liked music and stuff, but like dance music, like EDM type stuff. But when I heard the DJs mixing the music and remixing the music live on turntables, I just was mesmerized. I'm like, how on earth do they do that, right?
Can you move the mic a little bit under you? Like, yeah. Twist it like this.
Big difference, yeah.
Cool.
There we go.
Yeah,
cool.
So you see this DJ mixing.
I just started to get exposed to it. And then that was late in my college years. And then...
Is that like more like dance music?
Yeah, dance music. And back then... It was kind of pre-house, kind of house music, dance music. Industrial was starting to come on the scene, like Trent Reznor, Nine Inch Nails, and stuff like that. Nights are Ebb, Front 242, all that stuff. And so I basically, as any DJ back then will do, you can't afford, Technic 1200s or $400 each on a mixing board. So you get these little Sony home turntables that have a pitch control, and you start teaching yourself how to do beat matching because it's all manual. Today it's all electronic. You push beat match and it's all done for you, right? But back then you had to get the two discs moving at the same speed and cue them up and do everything at the same time. So that was really interesting. So, after a year of doing that in my bedroom, then I started doing it live in Seattle. And that was kind of the beginning of that music promotion and proper DJing. I worked at 3 clubs. One was most notably was the Weathered Wall for almost 5 years. I basically went in and said, look, I'll take every Saturday night. I know it could be your busiest night, but you guys aren't crushing it. And it's a great club, but you're not able to do the promotion properly. So I said, I'll take Saturdays and you take the bar, I take the door. And I'll do all the promotion. I did all the promotion, and we had lines out the door around the block for years. But I paid the dancers because we were one of the first clubs that had dancers in cages. We'd bring people from Vegas, professional dancers with all the feathers and garb, and
like go-go dancers, and
that's
cool.
proper. But it was still very underground. There was no pop music at all. This was all progressive underground dance music. Because also at the same time, I had a job at the Underground Dance Music, which was the name of the store on Capitol Hill in Seattle that I worked at. So I could get access to all the best vinyl being pressed out. I'd be the first to hear it in Seattle. I'd, of course, order enough for me and then some of my friends, but I got to listen to a lot of music and have access to, which was super key, And then we started, TR went into throwing rave parties. So I was playing at those and participating in that. And
so this is when you're like 15, 14?
No, I'm just out of college.
Okay. So you're 18,
19, 20, 21. And that's also.
And the college was business.
Yeah, I got a business degree with an emphasis on hotel and restaurant administration, which is basically a business degree with an emphasis on hospitality, entertainment, hotel, restaurant, food.
And you didn't want to do anything with that. You just deep dived into the DJing and
because I love hospitality, food, wine. I love all that stuff. But to work in that industry is tough. While everyone else is playing, you're working, and so it becomes a bit of a subculture on its own. So I didn't go that direction. I just went to a different subculture. I went to music and DJing, which starts at 8 and goes until 3 a.m. So probably worse, but not every night of the week. But I worked 3 nights a week, and then did promotion as well, during the day and in the evenings that I wasn't working, which meant posters on telephone poles, flyers on cars, interviews on radio spots, anything and everything. Putting out mixtapes that you recorded the night before at the gig, and selling them at the record store, and just promotion. But that's when, that was right in the middle of the whole Seattle grunge scene.
Yeah, because I wanted to ask you that. That must have been, that's very a contrast though, because, if you have on one hand this kind of pre-house techno music, and then you have the grunge that is, I don't know, super raw somehow and very emotional and very...
Yeah,
I don't know, trist, or how do you say it, sad in some way.
Yeah, well, it's the whole kind of story. I like to call it the Seattle sound. Grunge was a label that was given it by the newspapers and by the press. So it's really the sound that came out of Seattle, which was really just post-punk. If you listen to the really early Seattle bands, they were just hardcore, like the Melvins, and just the list is huge. And those were the ones that influenced. And then of course, you had Nirvana, you had Pearl Jam, and we can talk about all those stories with them like mad. But it was a great and fertile landscape, because when you're in music, you're in music. Like my roommate was a promoter as well, and his girlfriend was a talent scout for Sony Music. So you're just always absorbed in music, and it didn't matter what kind of music, because I still had guitar. I still love rock, and I loved that sound. So it was, if you weren't spinning records somewhere, you're probably going out to see a show at the Crocodile or Rock Candy or Moe's Moroccan Cafe or any of these general places that were popular, and seeing bands most usually before they got big.
Like what bands did you see, for example, out of those?
Well, definitely Nirvana, definitely Pearl Jam, but even before that, when they were Mother Love Bone, or even before that, when they were Green River, various offshoots of that. That's a whole,
they are the Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, all these are very kind of connected bands.
Yeah, and so I remember seeing Soundgarden at a skating rink.
Yeah,
you know, and Nirvana in a small club that would hold 60 people. You know, but they were gigging all the time. All the bands were working really hard, and that's how some of them got really, really good. Practice on stage, live, and crazy. You know, being nuts.
This, I mean, this. I've thought about it, and I haven't found the answers. I tried looking for them actually. I've always been curious, why Seattle, why that time, and I was, you know, because it was such a game changer. I had this guy here, Jeff Tyson, a guitar guy, on one of my previous episodes, and he was in a band that was, you know, making an album, and they took fucking 6 years making that album, and during those 6 years Nirvana came, and nobody wanted their music anymore because it just went out of fashion faster than a nun runs out of a porn store, you know. and then it really made me think, what was it? Because it must have been something that created this atmosphere or something. Yeah.
Well, I think Seattle has always been a hub for original music. It was long before the title grunge or, you know, the Seattle sound came into fruition. There were bands playing in all these clubs long before that, their own original music, all genres. You could go see funk, blues. You go to Pioneer Square, which is right in the center of the old city, all blues. Right? And then you just go out from there and you'd find the rock clubs, blues clubs, funk. I mean, I can name so many different genres that were being played. But I think when you look at the weather, how dreary it is, and like a lot of bands, like Nirvana, they came from like Aberdeen. They came from up north. They lived in Olympia for a long time. Everyone's, they're from Seattle. Well, not really. But that's where the hub was, right? That's the middle. That's kind of the ecosystem. And so you look at just, it's cloudy, overcast, a bit depressing, and lots of punk, lots of hard, not metal, not hair band type stuff, but just traditional, loud, raging guitars with guys screaming in the mic. Some coherently, some not. And a lot of women too, like L7 and some of these 7 Year Bitch, like amazing female bands too. And so that's what you started to see. So that was every day for us. And we were wearing flannel shirts because it's logging, it's trees, that's the garb. And you're wearing the mini layers because one day it's going to rain. In one day it could do 3 different things. Yeah. So you had layers. You had the flannel shirt, the sweater, and that's when the fashion, you know, started the grunge fashion, which followed the music. So a lot of that was just somebody stumbled in and said, hey, there's some good bands here.
Yeah, somebody put a stamp on it somehow.
Somebody put a stamp on it, and it's more almost by circumstance because it's what we did. It was every day for us. Then all of a sudden, now someone's getting some, you know, I think Nirvana signed to Epic or Polygram, and then pretty soon, you know, Pearl Jam, you know, they were Mother Love Bone. Andy died, the lead singer died of a heroin overdose. They looked for some time for a new lead singer, which eventually became Eddie Vedder, and he's from LA. And so that's the Pearl Jam, you know, today, but that wasn't easy for them either. They had to transition that. They weren't accepted right away because Eddie was from LA and not from the Pacific Northwest. People get over that real fast because he's such an incredible vocalist and the band was amazing. Right. But that first album was completely written by, you know, Mike McCready and the rest of the members of the band. And then Eddie got a hold of it, and he, like a rock opera, he just, you know, within a few days, at least this is what his story was, he wrote. And if you look at how those songs are connected and stuff, you can kind of feel like that was kind of the method. But you take incredible musicians, you put them together, and you get that kind of magic. And they're still, I don't know, I look at them as the new, you know, Pink Floyd or the Dead, really, the new Dead, because they've got such a following. They can come to Prague, you know, 30 years after the 90s and fill a stadium every time. So it's really interesting.
But you mentioned heroin. There was a lot of drugs there. I mean, and so basically what you're describing is a very depressive, unreliable environment. With a lot of weather changes. It sounds a little bit like Iceland, where I'm from, but we don't have heroin. I don't know. Maybe it's too expensive or it's too far away or something.
You're lucky.
That was a. I mean that's always kind of been how do you say, like one of the demons of that music or that area, right?
Yeah. A lot of deaths, some of which whether it be Lane Staley, or et cetera, but there's a lot more underneath that of that culture. And a lot of guys used to shoot it. They also used to smoke it. You could walk into a club and you'd smell kind of like hazelnuts, and you'd be like, yeah, okay, someone's smoking heroin. A lot of addiction. I remember when I was DJing, we used to mix the bands with the DJing and stuff, and I'd have live drummers and stuff. And I remember the drummer from Sky Crazy Mary was drumming and stuff, and he was a recovered heroin addict. Ben couldn't get him near, like, if this party started going sideways, Ben, let's go. Because it was just, it's too much of a temptation.
But why is this? Why is heroin such a big problem in that area? Is it the same thing as that creates all the music?
Yeah. It's just the dark, the rain. It's a little bit depressing. I think Finland and Seattle have maybe the highest suicide rates on the planet. But that's it has a certain dark undertow, and that showed in the music. Again, they're very working man, a lot of loggers working in the trees, some manufacturing, Boeing's there, AT&T's there, Microsoft's there. So it quickly became tech hubs as well. But in the 80s and 90s, it was still fairly low key.
Any favorite band out there? I mean, like if you that you saw that you like, is there some, because I like all these bands, Alice in Chains, Pearl Jam, Nirvana, obviously. Yeah. I mean, and I still remember where I was when I heard "Smells Like Teen Spirit" for the first time, and I remember on what stair out of 35 stairs down in a nightclub, I remember in which stair I was when I heard that song. It was such a mesmerizing moment.
Yeah.
Was there something that you like? I don't know. When you look back, is it some like wow moment where you heard something or saw some band live? Yeah.
Well, probably for me and probably most of us, it wasn't like an aha moment because
it was there
because it was always part of the scene. It was just punk rock, right? But I think Kurt Cobain with Nirvana turned it into pop, right?
Or mainstream.
Mainstream. Yeah. It was still the hard riffs. It was still, but he admitted it himself. I'm writing candy rock songs, pop, love it. Was always conflicted whether he wanted to be a rock star or not, right? But he was, whether he liked it or not. And so, there wasn't the aha moment, but you could see it coming. Soundgarden really was one of the first, before Nirvana and everything, that really was making it. And they had so many influences that was not necessarily grunge. If you listen to their lyrics, and like Black Hole Sun and everything, I mean, there's Ozzy in there, there's Zeppelin in there, there's just so much. I remember reading something that like when David Grohl heard, Black Hole Sun, he was just blown away. Like, this may be the next rock anthem, which it kind of was, right? And so I never thought of Chris Cornell and Soundgarden as being grunge. I thought they were much bigger than that. But then you had Nirvana, and you had the Melvins, and you had L7, even Sonic Youth out of New York. They played right in that same arena with their own style. And then you had, bands from all over, Candlebox. I mean, the list is huge. And so and then it started to attract. So what happened was when Seattle, okay, this is our ordinary day, but then people started coming from all over the country, musicians from Wisconsin, from California, from New York, saying this is the new scene. So you got this huge influx. Because you're right, from one day to the next, it killed the hair band. Bon Jovi who? Yeah. Right? Twisted Sister, what?
Yeah.
Who? It just overnight, those guys went from filling stadiums to riding Greyhounds, and staying in Motel 6, because it was so transformative.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah. I even became ashamed of being an Iron Maiden fan during this time, which had been my band, and then of course Guns N' Roses and all the hair metal came, and then comes Nirvana, and you're just like, Iron Maiden? No, never. And they kind of went out of fashion for like 10, 15 years, and this killed a lot of bands. I mean, a lot of bands tried to copy grunge or become grunge or something, and they all failed miserably because it wasn't original.
It's a different animal. The chord structures are different. Yeah. They're very dark. They're very minor. The riffs, the rhythms, it had to be something you grew up with, kind of, because it wasn't even just solid punk, but
exactly.
Yeah, I remember like Blue Oyster Cult. A friend of mine in Minnesota rented Blue Oyster Cult to play at their wedding for $6,000.
Yeah, which they have songs that have been played 12 million times on Spotify. Don't Fear the Reaper or
and they're playing at a wedding. I'm like,
yeah,
that's impressive.
Yeah. So you said this time of your life when you're DJing, promoting, and kind of in the music scene after college. That's what 10 years.
Yeah, a little over 10 years. Yeah.
You left us deep-hearted and oh so alone.
And how did your I don't know, your sister was 5 years younger, so she's becoming a doctor, I guess.
Yeah, she was still in university and then moving to Arizona.
She's moving on in life, and the son is slacking around in music.
Yeah, I was pretty much that. My mother was always super supportive, wanted to hear all my mixtapes and the music, and if she'd been a little younger, she'd probably, come and see me, spin for thousands of people, which we often did. But my dad, not so much. I don't think we ever talked about it. It wasn't something that he thought was a real thing, even though I was.
But you paid your bills and you did your own thing, and
completely. We'd throw one big party a month, and then with the club stuff, more than paid my bills. Definitely.
But they were not against it, though, or he wasn't against it. He just didn't. He was indifferent.
Indifferent is probably word. We didn't really chat about it much because it wasn't really on the radar. My mom was like loving it. She was like, "Yeah, this is the best. That's cool. Send me another tape."
Yeah.
But that's that's fathers and sons. That's normal. So, yeah, it was good. But then after being in it for a while, I said, "Okay, this is a young man's game. Unless I'm in a rock band and I'm touring." I can't be I don't want to be a DJ when I'm 55, spinning underground clubs, that can be anywhere from 60 people to a couple thousand people, but still, okay, that's fine. And I had built, my DJ name was DJ Soma. I'd built a following. I could fill a club, whatever. But, at the end of the day, it got very, very competitive, and it got very private too. Like everyone was hiding, putting stickers on their record labels, and so no one could see what you're playing when you're playing it. When I was the opposite, I'm like, yeah, here, have this, have that. I'll give them the names. Yeah, if you want to order it, I'll get it for you at the record store, whatever. So I was always promoting, but I was always open because music is an open thing. And so that kind of turned me off a lot, where like everything was so competitive, and all the DJs, they were just clawing their way to the top and stepping on each other's necks to get there. So I started looking to do something else while at the same time. So I started to kind of fade into technology and look at technology opportunities. Ended up working for a small mobile operator.
When is this? What years are these?
God, I'm trying to think.
95, 6, 7?
Yeah, 94, 5, 6, 7.
So that's that when kind of mobile is in its infancy, it's kind of starting, right?
Yeah. So the first mobile networks are going up in the US. They'd been in Europe for a little while. But there are like, you're getting, like in the US, it was all under one brand called Cellular One, right? And so there was one mobile operator, and then there was two. So there was AT&T had one mobile network, and then Cellular One, the brand, was there, but it was owned by the whole network in the US was owned by like 20 different operators. They were just using one brand. And so then they started auctioning off additional frequencies. So like Verizon came in, other mobile operators came in, Nextel, et cetera. And that also started happening in Europe. So just before that, and I remember my dad saying, you should, if you got an opportunity in mobile, take it, because this is like the railroad. Like
it's going to go everywhere.
Rush. It's like, this is the next big thing. And so I did. I went to work for a small mobile company, which later grew to have a have a US-wide network called VoiceStream, which went public, and I was part of that team, just working for the guys. I was never a top executive, but I was part of that mix. And so that's what showed me, my God, you can take something small and turn it into something massive, right? So we went public on the NASDAQ, and then 2 years later, after that, I came to Europe to deploy networks.
But in that voice stream, what because you say you're not one of the top executives, but like what did you bring to the table in a company like that?
Yeah, so I was lucky that I got in very, very early, and worked. I was like the guy, college degree, but had been doing all this other stuff, and they kind of liked that diversity. But I knew how to build things. I had determination. I knew how to, if I had a problem, how to fix it, right? And so I must have had 7 interviews, and I ended up working directly for as kind of an assistant to the general counsel, the head of engineering, and the head of market rollouts. So so I just got a wide view of the whole business. So I was doing anything and everything, and I think it kind of goes back to the reason I was successful is because it goes back to that determination, right? You can do anything, and if you're not sure, well, ask. If you need help, get help, right? But don't sit at your desk and say, "Shit, this is hard," you know. And so you become known as a problem solver. And so pretty soon I very quickly became a go-to. Whenever someone needed anything, even if it wasn't even in those departments, they'd be like, "Hey, JR, what do you think? Can you take this on?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And so for me, it was just because I wanted to learn. Like, this is cool. Yeah, I'll try it. Yeah, whatever. I have no freaking idea what it is. What is an environmental impact statement study? How do you do that? Well, I don't know. I'll go figure it out. I'll go talk to somebody, whatever. So I got given lots of projects. And the reason that was, and this came back to me, and I try to instill this in my children, is just be really, whatever it is you decide to do, be really freaking good at it, right? And so that doesn't mean you're going to do everything right, but it means if someone gives you something, they're comfortable, it's going to get done. It's going to get done on time. And if it isn't, you're going to tell them about it, and you're going to ask for their help. That's all they asked. And that was my only goal for every performance review, for every single thing. Every one of my bosses just said, yeah, you're just the go-to guy. You always get it done. And if you have a problem, you tell us, so there's no surprises. Just keep doing that. And I had 6 promotions in 6 years, you know, and that one universal, those traits are what should drive every human on earth when it comes to their work life, and maybe everything else too. But that just defines success. To me, that defines success.
And then I guess you know, because it's also has helped that it's a booming industry. I mean, you feel that you're part of something exciting that is happening, right?
Yeah.
And you know,
always changing, always growing.
Yeah, and people are adapting, or what's it called? You're onboarding,
evolving, and bringing on new people. Yeah,
and you know, you're getting users adapting to your what the fuck?
Yeah,
is it
customers.
Called? Yeah, customers are taking on your product. They're
coming on board.
Yeah,
getting mobile phones. You know, remember the first mobile phone was like a brick. Yeah, even had a suitcase with it. You know. Yeah. And I was like, I didn't even have a mobile phone, and I worked for a mobile company for 2 years before they made me get one. Like, I don't want one of those things. What do I? And then you can get me anytime. Yeah. And then once I had one, you're addicted, and that's what happened to everyone.
Yeah, I guess that's part of the business model. But so that from that you kind of get into Europe, right? You went into the UK
Well, I went. So I was when I left VoiceStream. After we went public, it was like a year and a half after we went public. Some guys that had worked for me deploying the mobile networks around the U.S. had come to Prague to work on what was then Radio Mobile, and they had just been awarded a license, and they were responsible for deploying the network. And they had big penalties if they didn't get it done on time, and they were not getting it done on time. And so these guys that worked for me previously came and were like, "Hey, Jared, you want to come? Maybe you can help us figure out what's going wrong, help us to accelerate the builds and the radio planning and the construction and the permitting and everything." Because it's different countries, but there's still a lot of regulation. It's a lot of similarities. And so they said, "Would you just come for 6 months as a consultant on a day rate?" And I'm like, went to my bosses at VoiceStream and said, "Hey, this is a great opportunity. Prague in 1997, you know, it seems like a place and time where you don't want to miss, and it'd be really cool to go check it out." And they're like, "Yeah, come back in 6 months. We'll have a job for you. Don't even worry about it. You know, we'll see you then." And so that's exactly what I did. And then, like every other expat I've ever met, like I went for 6 months or I went for 3 weeks. Oh, and I've been here for 25 years.
Yeah. Right? I came in for 3 months. 12 years later, I'm here.
Yeah, exactly.
But wait, so did you know anything about Prague at that time? I mean, did you have any idea what you were getting yourself into?
Zero. But I had 3 friends that were here that I trusted, and they were like, "Look, you just got to come. It's a time and place, and it'll never be like this ever again. So you need to experience it and get on a plane." And I did. I had a job. I had a signed contract.
So I mean, it's not like you were coming in just to knock on doors and beg for money or something.
Yeah, could have done that too, probably. But no. So it was all good, and so and that's right when then all of the countries in Europe started to realize that spectrum had value. Like these radio frequencies, you could sell it to a mobile operator like Vodafone, Orange, T-Mobile, and they'll pay billions of dollars for those frequencies so they can operate their phone networks. And those networks, it was expensive, and they were pretty much a license to print money as far as a business goes. So they'd pay, but they knew how to operate a network, how to bill people, how to collect money, how to do the promotion, how to do the sales and marketing. But very few, as this rapid deployment started, sometimes 2 or 3 new operators in each country. How do we deploy these networks? How do we do the RF planning to design the radio frequencies?
Yeah, and actually to build the infrastructure
And
physically.
You have to go out and do all the planning. Then you have to find the rooftops, build the towers, but you have to get those all permitted. You have to get those all permitted, and they take, here in the Czech Republic, sub permits, and then the proper, building permits. And then you have to install all the equipment. We have to build it with steel. Then you got to install the equipment. Then you have to connect it to the network. Then you have to optimize it, debug it. And then, and there's not just the sites, but then there's the BTSs. And then from the BTSs goes the switch. So it's a proper network, a phone network, but it's all wireless. And so you had to build in the network that your people talk on. Then you also had to build the microwave links and the fiber links to transfer all the data back. In between the cell sites. So it's pretty intense. And there weren't a lot of people that knew how to do all that, but I'd been doing that in the US for quite a few years. I was, I was the national acquisition manager working with all the construction guys and permitting guys and all that. And so it made it, I was like, well, I know how to do this.
You were like the one-eyed guy in the Kingdom of the Blind.
Yeah, exactly.
You were the one with the knowledge.
Yeah. And so, I formed a company with a friend of mine named Phil Caro, who had been here even before me, and he had so much drive. Still today, the company that we formed is still alive. But it's mainly focused on the U.S. now, and we just marched. I think we did 27 networks in 14 countries over 6 years.
Out of here,
yeah, out of Prague, but Switzerland, Hungary, Germany, Ukraine, Switzerland. I mean,
and
sometimes multiple, and sometimes multiple. Like we built half of what was the Oscar network here, working with Ericsson years ago, which became Vodafone. We built half the T-Mobile network, which is still T-Mobile, right? It was radio mobile at the time. So just lots of countries, we built twice.
So you were more on, let's say, the infrastructure side,
yeah,
on the business there, and. That's far away from gastro and hospitality, right?
Way, yeah, exactly. I think
so. You kind of learned on the go. I mean, you never went back to school.
No. Yeah, you learn more just applying yourself and doing it, I thought. But those same skills, right, that we talked about. You're smart, you work hard, you just get the job done, and you don't have a bunch of excuses. Why not? And when it's your own company and you're starting, so I was bringing people in, to deploy networks. I think we had 160 people, just in various projects around Europe in different countries, and that's even tougher because you've got to get them residence permits, building, work permits. Half the time we just didn't, because they needed the network deployed. And so the government would kind of turn a blind eye for 6 or 8 months while we did our deal,
That's the beauty about the Czech Republic, because sometimes you can get away with, they see the greater good of what you're doing and they don't, okay, let's not mess with this, But then, so you're in this business here for what you say, 6, 7 years, right?
Yep.
And then you go into AVG.
After that, I went in. I launched an MVNO, a virtual mobile network operator, in the UK.
Yeah, that was in the UK.
Piggybacked. Right? So basically, we bought airtime from Vodafone.
Yeah.
And we created our own tariffs, our own promotions. We did our own customer service.
So that's basically like a brand that runs on another people's infrastructure.
Yep, exactly.
But you handle all the customer interaction and all that.
Everything. We created our own tariffs. We did everything. It's like what Virgin in the UK, they run off of, I believe,
or Tesco Mobile or something. Some of those guys do.
Yeah, those are all MVNOs.
Yeah.
So we did that in the UK, focused on students. Because everyone thought students were cheap and they wanted prepaid cards. And we did some research and said, no, they really rely on their mobile devices. They spend an average of £26 a month and they're all on contract because they want the latest, greatest phones. And with the contract comes the latest, greatest phone. And so we blew that market right out. We had the highest average revenue per customer in the country. Because if you take all your blended, ARPU, the average revenue per month, right, it was 19 pounds. Ours was 26. And so that quickly got sucked up by Vodafone.
Yeah, but which is what actually happens quite often when
Yeah.
somebody opens up these so-called virtual mobile network operators that is basically just a brand on top of somebody else's infrastructure.
Yep. So we have no infrastructure cost.
Yeah, they actually get bought by the big ones in the end. You acquire customers, you build a customer base, and then you sell it off to a big one, and then you wait 2 years on a gardening leave, and then you do it again.
Yeah, and in some countries you can pull that off for sure.
I've seen it in Denmark. When I lived in Denmark, I saw the same guy do it like two or three circles on this market.
Because so Vodafone was a business brand. They really couldn't have cared less about students, less about consumers, the average consumer. And so when we came in and said, we'll attack the student market, because they couldn't. They're like,
they were just happy probably.
We dilute our brand. We don't even know how to do it. So yeah, you come in, we'll send you all the call records from the switch, and you have to on your users, and you've got to do everything else. And so they made money and we made money, and it was really fun. I don't know if you remember, and maybe they still have T-Mobile. They used to have the Flexi tariff, where it's based on kind of units and different things. We created that tariff. We were the first ones on the planet to create this tariff we didn't call it Flexi. We just said, look, we give you 1,000 credits. You can use them however you want. Voice is one credit a minute. Voice is 2 credits a minute. Texts are 1 credit a minute. And picture messages back then, were three credits a minute. We don't care how you use them. You just have 1,000 credits. Use them however you want. And that killed the average mobile operator because they made their money when they had, okay, you have this many voice minutes, this many SMS, this,
and counted everything.
And then you'd always break out of your bundle. And instead of having a $19 tariff, you would end up paying $25. But we eliminated that, and they loved it.
Well, some of them must have hated
it.
Customers loved it, but the operators hated it.
But T-Mobile emulated it completely in the UK with the Flexi tariff. They lost $1.6 billion in revenue that year. They emulated it because you can't do it in a massive to everyone. Students, yes, because they were spending 26 pounds even with those tariffs, but not the average punter on the street. No way.
And then you get to AVG, right?
Yeah, and then from there, then came AVG. I was trying to remember the exact year. It might have been 2004 or something. And
AVG is, for those who don't know, I mean, that's one of the world's biggest antivirus company.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's one of, if you have Norton.
Norton, McAfee. There's AVG. And AVG. There's quite a few. Avast. Yep. Avast. And Node 32 or ESET.
Yeah, ESET, yeah.
Yeah, so ESET, Avast, and AVG are all Czech-based or Slovak-based. At the time, they were the same country because ESET is from Slovakia. And they're all three in their own right. AVG was the first. AVG, but that's when the Microsoft platform was born, the operating system. And as soon as they start to see there were vulnerabilities, people started to exploit those vulnerabilities with viruses and things. Then there needed to be a layer of protection, and a lot of people from the Czech Republic, smart scientists and engineers, started making those products. I think McAfee and Norton from Symantec started first, but then quickly. Fast followers.
So you come into AVG as a CEO, and how big was the company back then?
It was probably, I'm trying to remember now, it was doing about $12 million in revenue
per year.
I think it had 120 people, mainly engineers. Probably 100 of those were engineers in Brno. Yeah.
And then you stay there for how long?
Just under 8 years.
And what was it? What did you do? What was it? Because I think you told me, we were talking about this once. You said that they were struggling selling their products.
Yeah.
And you went into this freemium. What was the kind of the...
So as much as I'd like to take a lot of credit for
AVG.
Just do that. I can't. And this is one, Carl Obluk, who was their CTO, their founding CTO, and also was the CEO before I came in, who's still a good friend of mine. In fact, I talked to him today. He told me the story that they made the product, great product, very competitive, maybe better than most of the other products, but they just, small company, Czech Republic, they didn't know how to market it. They didn't know how to sell it. They didn't know how to build a brand. And they were going by the name Grisoft. So the company was called Grisoft, but the brand was called AVG. And so one day they just said, well, fuck it. Let's just give it away for free. If we're not making any money, let's just give it away. Let's just disrupt the market. And what they didn't realize was that was the beginning of freemium in the technology space. You know, if you go back, Gillette razors did freemium to the military. There was freemium models that had been created long before that, but in technology, it was probably the first. And it was by accident, which most of these things are. A lot of these big business innovations are someone just trying it on, or an experiment, or even just a bloody accident, right? And so that's when the brand started to grow, because all the technologists on the planet were going, well, there's this AVG product out of the Czech Republic that's better than Norton, better than Symantec, and it's free. So they would install it on everyone's computers, you know, their aunts, their uncles, their moms, everybody. I rarely run into someone who didn't have AVG on their computer at one time or another. So I was really fortunate in that I got to walk into a company, and it'd been around for 5 or 6 years, limited traction, but still $12 million is nothing to sneeze at, right? And a global customer base, mostly in English-speaking countries. And they had it translated into every language under the sun, like 67 different languages, but only about 9 of those mattered. And it was English-speaking countries or countries where English was the strong second language. That's just how it was. And so we proceeded to, over that 8 years, I proceeded to build a proper management team, which was more outward-facing, sales and marketing. The engineers were world-class, always were, and continue to this day to be. We put lots of challenges in front of them. They hit every single one of them. I can give you examples, but I won't bore you. But we grew it from, this small company to a global company, doing just under 300 million in revenue, growing rapidly, like 35% free cash flow. So just growing. The first 4 years I was there, it was 100% a year. And so, and we had the opportunity then to take it public on the New York Stock Exchange, which we were successful at. Thank God. That's a hectic roadshow. And, what if you fail? Again, a different story for a different time. But we got to do that.
Yeah, but with that, let me go back a little bit, because it's such an interesting thing, because you say $12 million when you walk in. Is this the DJ from Seattle walks in through the door? That has been doing a little bit of infrastructure stuff in mobile.
Yeah, and launching MVNO. What got me the job was because I had done the MVNO in the UK, so I had consumer product experience, and that's what helped, because this was a consumer antivirus company. And so they're like, okay, you get the consumer, and they couldn't find anyone. I mean, they looked and they looked and they looked, but they couldn't find a good fit. Someone who would be willing to live in Brno, someone who understood the Czech culture, because I'd been deploying networks all over Europe, but lived here, understood the Czech culture, the challenges, because they didn't want some big blowhard to walk in the door and say, oh, you guys are a bunch of idiots, and destroy what they had built. And that happens a lot, especially American CEOs coming into foreign countries.
It's a very different culture.
Yeah, and so you have to be cognizant of that. And so that's probably what got me the job, was the fact that I'd been in the UK for 3 years. And I had the original investors in AVG I had known as well. And they had helped me sell a company in the past, part of this infrastructure company. And so we knew them and they knew me. And they knew what I could do, so they were big fans. Pierre Caquet was one of the guys, if anybody out there remembers Pierre when he lived here. And so that helped. That was a stepping stone.
Fix the mic a little bit like this, and
cool.
And JR speaks a lot with his hands, so we keep moving the mic a little bit around. But so you walk through the door on a $12 million a year company that has an antivirus product that it has struggle selling. And one of the things that happens is that the product is actually given away for free.
Yep.
But the revenue grow 100% per year. So how does that work? So
after I got here, they were growing 20, 30% a year.
Yeah, but how does that work? How do you grow revenue when you're giving away your product for free?
Yeah, that's a great story. So with the freemium product, and this is what I loved about the company, even though I'd done nothing in antivirus, I knew nothing about cybersecurity at the time. I just had the consumer experience, online experience, et cetera. And so I thought, okay, these guys have a pretty well-known brand, right? They're on millions of computers already as a free product, and they had a free and a paid product, right? But they were super smart, but it was an engineering culture, right? So the go-to-market was fairly non-existent. It was hard to buy the product on the website. And as far as renewing the product when the first year was up, forget it. It was like pulling teeth, right? And so if you just make it easy for people to buy and easy for people to renew, and then you also start doing some advertising, you start doing some PR, you start leveraging, you bring in people who have done it before. We went from 2 people on our web team just doing consumer web to like 37 and 7 different languages sitting in Prague, right? So you just got the best of the best no matter where they were. And so that diversity helped, but then you became an engine. And so basically the more free people you have, they love you and they trust you because you just gave them a great free product. Again, one of the best products in the market, but costs you nothing. And so that builds trust. And then pretty soon we're at 100 million customers free. Then we're at 150. Then we're at 200. Then we're at 250. Then we're at 300. So one of the first companies to hit like 300 million active customers. And that's like they've done something, with the software in the last 30 days. So that was our cutoff. And so 300 million of those. And so only 14 of those million ever moved to the paid product. Because once you've got somebody for free on a product that works really, really well, it's hard to get them to pay.
Yeah.
But what they paid for was different features. The antivirus engine, the core protection engine was the same in both. But if you wanted anti-spam, if you wanted email filtering, whatever, then you moved to the internet security, the paid version, right? And so, like I said,
so you're basically selling, let's say, a product in a category above with a broader spectrum of protection, right?
Yeah, just broader spectrum.
A bigger condom.
Yeah, maybe like 3.
Yeah, for all directions.
And some, that did work. But the trust and the brand awareness is what drove. Like there were months where we had like 12 million people come to our website to check out free. And what we found was when they come to check out free, sell them hard there. If they don't want the paid, they just want the free, make it easy for them to get the free. But you would get a large percentage to either buy it or take a trial and then buy it. But we didn't care as long as we had them, because once they use the free product,
you have them.
Not even 3% will then convert to the paid product. So when you get them during the buying decision on the website, the first time they come, that's when you win. And we would get 35% or so to convert to a paid product right then. And so that's what drove a lot of revenue. But when you have that many customers, we also had a platform that helped them protect them in their browser. When they were doing search, we would scan the links. Now it's common, but we were the first to have this. Yeah. And so we struck deals with Google, Yahoo, et cetera, all the search engines, and said, we want a large percentage of your search revenue because you're being protected by our service. They're entering your browser through our link scanner technology. And so we got a massive percentage of the search revenue. That was sometimes that was worth over $100 million a year. So that's how you earn money from your customer base, and you can charge them nothing, right? It isn't selling their data, which is common today. We protected their data. We kept them private. We just got paid by those companies. So there were lots of little deals like that because you had such a massive base that we could do to leverage the revenue.
Yeah, I used AVG back in Iceland and also I think when I lived in Denmark. And what I really liked about it at that time was that I was never being hassled to give my credit card number or anything like this. It was super, super easy to adopt to the product. And it actually worked.
It was,
when I went to some of the darker corners of the internet, AVG made sure that I didn't make any mess.
Didn't do trouble. Yeah, I didn't have any spyware or malware attached to your hard drive.
But the company grew. I mean, you went from what you say, like 120 people when you join, and then by when you listed on the stock exchange, it was by like 1,000 people, right?
I think it was like 800 and something, but yeah, with contractors and everybody else probably.
So this is in 8 years. You go from let's say 100 to 800. That's a lot of people.
Yeah. It is. It wasn't easy.
But how did you? What did you do right?
There was two things that probably equated. Number one, you got your engineering group, you got your finance group, and they grew independently. But we also I acquired 19 different technology companies during that period, none of which, except for one, a tune-up company out of Germany, contributed to our revenue. It was all great engineering teams, small, with great technology that I wanted to integrate into my stack, right? So when I started, we were an antivirus company. When I left, we had 19 different products we could cross-sell and upsell to that 300 million people, right? That was a huge growth engine. But I did a lot of that through, acquiring small technology companies from all over the world. Israel, Germany, the United States, and probably a few more, right? And we had offices in California, we had offices in Israel, we had offices in Germany, we had offices obviously in the Czech Republic, our hub, and in the UK. So it's when you talk about it, it's a lot of different business units in a lot of different locations, so it's not quite as big as you think.
If you take it, it matters. You let me in.
But it's still, I mean, to manage. I mean, I've done 2 mergers, for example, in my life where I had to merge 2 ongoing businesses into one, and it's not easy. It's not easy to integrate an acquired company into what you're doing. It's not easy to, I don't know, just go from 20 salespeople to 50. I mean, to scale up is actually, it's often more easy to scale down, because you kind of know, okay, I just have to let this stuff go. And to manage growth, and this is just an exponential growth.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously it's an online product. The cost of making the product is the same whether you have 100 million customers or 300 million customers. You know what I mean? I mean, there's the scaling in terms of product production is super easy.
Yeah.
But all the other stuff, why? Because it's a success case. I mean, you come in there, you list it on the stock exchange, a lot of people get a lot of money. And
we were in the top 10 return to investors the year we went public.
Yeah.
And that's unheard of.
And the exit was what, $300 million or something like that. It was some crazy. What was the IPO?
The IPO, I think we were just over $1 billion valuation.
$1 billion valuation.
Yeah.
That's crazy money.
Back then, back then. Today it's nothing, but back then it was. Yeah. It was substantial.
And this is in 2013.
12. I left in 13. So it was, but it was also, we've been pushing off so much cash for so long.
As dividends
to shareholders, and which I was one as well, right?
Yeah.
But for years. So that's when you look at it, was like a 800x return on investment.
Wow.
It was ridiculous. Yeah, insane.
That's like Pablo Escobar makes or something,
Yeah, it made a lot of people a lot of money,
yeah.
which is good. Investors deserve to make a lot of money.
Yeah.
If they believe in you early and they give you money.
But I mean, it must have been because you mentioned earlier that there is a. I mean, this is a technology company. I know we're now turning this into some high-tech business podcast, but fuck that. I mean, so you have, and this is very often the case in technology. You have a lot of very clever IT or engineering people that have an idea, but they are not really great at presenting it, selling it, or packing it in. So that's one challenge, which of course just often is about finding then the right people to actually do what the other guys are lacking. But what my experience of coming in here and managing, because I went into an IT company as well, but on a much smaller scale than yours. We were just 100 people when I came, and we were 100 people when I left.
Were any of them the same?
But we grew, and you know, we had a lot of the changes through years, but zero growth. But you know, like I exactly sensed it in the same way as you were saying. It didn't make any sense to come in and you're an asshole, or you know, I'm gonna fire the 20 least performing people, or it just. People here need to be rubbed differently than maybe in some other markets. Was that never a challenge for you to kind of, I don't know, to manage in a different culture?
Yeah. But by then I'd worked in 7 different countries, and I can talk about the differences in each country. But my underlying theme was, excuse me, that they're every kind in every country. And so you could find the right people, right? So forget the stereotype, and there are stereotypes, and they're often correct. You know, you've heard the Italian ones, you've heard the Polish ones, the British ones, the Czech ones, whatever. Who cares? There's every kind. There's the go-getters that are super motivated. They can get shit done in every country. You just have to find them. And just like in every country, it's not always that easy. But I guess for me, like I came into AVG and I said, okay, I'm going to give it 6 months. I'm not going to remove anyone. I'm just going to learn the lay of the land. And there's going to be people that are rock stars and I'm going to promote. There's going to be people that are just blockers, and I'm going to fire their ass at the right time. And there's going to be people that just do their job, and my job is to like try to get the best out of them, right? And to make sure that I'm not seen as the corporate schmuck from America who just came in to run this Czech company and thinks he knows everything. So I listened more than I did anything else, and then at some point, within 6 months, I was very lucky. Some of the top original Czech management team decided to have a mutiny and call the shareholders, and they failed. And the next day I fired the top 3 in one day. Yeah. They still call that Bloody Tuesday. But that was because they decided to go behind my back and try to get me fired. And the shareholders went, we brought JR in here to do a job. He's doing the job. You guys are growing 100% a year, up from 25% last year. Fuck you. JR will decide your fate. And the next day I fired him. And then I promoted people at the same time. And that got me a lot of obedience and a lot of respect, that's not a country thing. That's just what happened. Right. And so that was super helpful. I noticed there was a change. The conversations in the hallway were more online with what we talked about in the business meeting. It wasn't, we make decisions together as a management team. And then the minute they leave the room, everyone decides to do something completely different. So no one's listening. That stopped when I fired 3 people. Right. So that was just kind of the beginning of that really strong team. And we really worked hard at finding the gems in the business, and there were a ton of them. So we brought in additional people from outside that had done it before, but we also really focused on just taking those, you know, men and women who were driven and were frustrated with the way things were done before. And the list is huge of people that I'm still friends with today that got promoted to, you know, lead accountant or head of project or my own chief of staff, you know, just yeah. Those rock star stories are everywhere in businesses if you find them.
But why do you think that? Why are there 3 antivirus companies in the Czech Republic? What do you have any? I mean, they're actually super good with IT and startups and technology. It's an interesting thing.
Yeah, I think there's a brain trust. Number one, you know, mathematicians, engineers. World class, absolute world class. When you look at AI and you look at computers and coding and stuff, it's always been world class. And so that's why, like even in Brno, you've got Red Hat, Nokia, Siemens, everybody's got development hubs because there's 3 technical universities and a lot of smart people coming out of them, right? And so that's part of it. And I think at the time, right, with the Windows operating system, the vulnerabilities, there was an opportunity. And so just, you know, 3 different groups of people, usually a couple guys together, you know, decided, well, hey, let's build this antivirus product. And, you know, they're all today huge. ESET, they're probably, again, this is guesstimate because they're private, but they're probably approaching $1 billion or more a year in revenue. Avast, which at some point, Avast took AVG private and merged the 2 companies. They were approaching that $1 billion mark. Avast just, you know, a month ago got purchased by Symantec LifeLock. So now all the free players are becoming locked into the paid players in the U.S. So it's kind of the end of an era, I think. But it seems like, especially consumer antivirus and security, it's just a business that's just kept growing, kept giving. It's always good to shareholders, and will continue to be. Sometimes it just defies gravity. I don't know how, but it does.
Yeah, you mentioned this about that, this Bloody Tuesday when you fired those 3 people. Did it ever feel bad for you to let someone go? I mean, did it ever? I mean, I think this is what most managers fear. That's to have to fire someone.
Yeah, initially, like in your career, it is a little bit hard. But I always looked at it like, well, if I let you sit, if I let someone who's substandard, you've warned them, you've tried maybe to move them into different slots, but if they don't fit, they don't fit. And when it's time to get rid of them, you need to do it. You need to identify it quickly, do what you need to do, and then if it doesn't work, you need to get rid of them fast. So hiring someone who isn't a good fit, or someone who just turns into not a good fit because they get a bad attitude, that's fine. There's no harm there. But if you don't identify it and fix it fast, that's on you. And so I got to the point where I would blame myself because I didn't react fast enough. I knew that person wasn't really right there. And I just,
you went against your gut instinct.
Yeah, went against your gut instinct, and you let it drag for an extra month or 2, and then you regret it. So my whole conversation when I had to get rid of someone is like, look, I think and I know it's not a good fit. If I don't do something about it now, I'm going to blame myself. I'm going to be angry. I'm going to be frustrated, and I might just take it out on you and make your life miserable. I don't want to be mad at myself. I don't want you to be mad at me. It's over. Today's your last day. This is our general counsel. It's taking you to your desk, clean out your desk. Today's your last day. Right. And then it's just clean. It's done. It doesn't happen that often. So it isn't like you do it every day. With those 3 in particular, and if they ever listen to this, they know who they are. They know what that day was. But I tried. And I brought them into the inner circle. I took their advice. I asked them, what do you want to do as things progress? I gave them a clean roadmap, and they were still stabbing me in the back, talking shit every day, just undermining everything I did. And then they orchestrated a coup against me, got the shareholders, the board members to meet with them without me knowing it. But I found out about it ahead of time. So I said, hey guys, after the meeting, let's go out and have beers. Let's have dinner. Oh no, I have to go home. Oh no, I have to do this. So I made them lie to me. And then they had it. They got whacked. The board called, said, look, it's up to you what you do with them. And the next day. So that 0 pity, 0. I was happy. And I was happy to get them out of the corral.
Yeah. And I think that, I think that this replacing staff or management or letting someone who is not fitting in or not performing is the fear of it is overrated, because like in my experience, you can actually, as long as you're just honest with the person, you say why, and I totally agree with you. Like the longer it goes that you don't deal with it, the more silly you actually look in your own eyes and also towards the other people. Because usually when someone is underperforming or working against the interest of the business, everybody knows it. Other people see it. And if you don't, as the big boss, if you don't wield the sword and get rid of the problem, you're actually looking weak.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're creating a culture where, it's okay. I can come into work late, or maybe not show up, or I can do a half-assed job. And that's a culture that's on you. You built it because you let it happen.
Yeah, I think it's I don't know, in my previous life when I was something, then I like to manage with people and I like to be with them, but I also always wanted them to know where the authority rested, like ultimately it's me who says who is on the team and who's not.
Yeah. Yeah.
But are you a good manager? I mean, like, are you a successful businessman if you look in the mirror and?
Well, I haven't. Not everything I've built has been a success. Out of the 8 companies probably that I've started and built, 2 of them went up in flames. Right. So the average is good, but that's usually due to concept, or maybe I just wrong market fit. I was drinking the Kool-Aid and it just wasn't really there. But the others were fine. But this is something I learned at when I was working for VoiceStream, which again, T-Mobile, because this is how I was managed. And that was, it's really simple. Be super clear on the vision Be super clear on the strategy.
I'm trying to get there to. Yeah, this is good.
There we go. Yeah. So be super clear. Your job as the CEO, the founder, is to define the long-term vision, the market fit, the strategy. And strategy is what you do every day, like how you do it. And then is to find the right people. So kind of and create the skeleton for how you're going to do it, but then and do that with your team and build a strong team that can do it better than you can. So someone who can sell better than you, someone who can do PR and marketing better than you, someone who can do engineering better than you. I know enough to be dangerous in all those. You know, I can turn on some heat, ask some right questions, but you go 2 layers down, I'm clueless. And so you find the people that are better and then you let them run. And it goes back to what I said earlier. They know what's expected. And so you let them do it. And if they have a problem, they'll come back to you and say, I need your help. Right? And you check in on a regular basis, you know. But as long as you know they're getting the job done and they're going to come to you if they have a problem, that's how you build a strong organization. Because if you're micromanaging, you're checking every number, checking everything and making sure everything's working right, no one has any joy. No one owns it except for you. And then you're a CEO/project manager, right? So set a clear path and let them run, help them when they need it, and make decisions. Right? Your job is to keep the ball moving forward all the time. It's going to zigzag, but it's forward motion and momentum. So make the tough decisions so that the team doesn't get stuck. It's kind of that simple, really.
Yeah, but I think a lot of people make it complicated because they are afraid to be exposed that they don't know everything, which is actually the best thing to know, is to know that you don't know everything.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way you can learn something new, and that's the only way you can actually admit that you need people like you're saying, you know, the people that are better than you at something, you know. I think it's I think we still do have this kind of myth around that the manager is some sort of a god or should know everything, you know, or the CEO should know.
Yeah.
Where actually the CEO is just another human, you know. It's not like, but it's just unlucky enough to be in that seat, you know.
I know.
Or not clever enough to do any of the better jobs, you know, that where real expertise is needed, you know.
Exactly.
But but so you leave. Yeah, but maybe this is what you're saying, like, you know, how simple it is. Make a plan, make the strategy, set the team, get the structure in, and let them run.
Yeah.
Is this something that you got from your family? Because you definitely didn't get it from school.
No, you never get that from school. I got it more so from that first job that I had, working for experienced operators, guys who knew how to build organizations, and that's how they treated me. And those are the exact words that the CEO told me when he interviewed me. This is how we work here. If you can't operate in that environment, don't take this job. Right? I'm going to give you so much freedom, but I need to trust that you're going to tell me if something's going wrong. Because if I find out from somebody else, I'm going to fire you on the spot. So run it fast, run it hard, hit the targets. But when you're in trouble, tell me so I can help you. Because some people feel like that's, oh, well, I'm weak. Like you said, I'm weak. I don't know everything. And I was the first one to go, hey, you know me, right? I've never done this before. Can you help me? And as long as you create that kind of a culture, you're fine.
But that's maybe just to wrap this up, you know, this business podcast. Because that's what I was curious about, the cultural thing and the struggles or the challenges of being here. I know that you had been working here, but you had been working on building infrastructure in the mobile operating world, and you lived here, but you were also doing projects in other countries where there's different culture. When I came here into management, I felt like people looked at me like some sort of a god. I should have all the answers. I should make all the decisions. And I didn't want to. And I was thinking at that time, okay, is this like from communism? Is it like that the authority is always very centralized? How was this? Because, I mean, what you're saying, and if you grow a company from 100 people to 800 people, you can't run everything through the CEO's desk.
Yeah. So no, those top executives that I brought in, some promoted, but a lot of them also from the outside who had previous global experience, that was on them, how they build their organization. We'd agreed every month, every year we do the budget. They would pitch how many heads they want. We'd shave it down by 60%, and here you go. And then they'd go do it. As long as they stayed within their budgets, I don't care what they did, how they did it, right? And that's the kind of people you have to have. Now, there was a long period, like a year and a half, where I did have to be involved in a lot of that stuff until those people came in. And that was hectic. That was hard. And sometimes I had no clue, what I was doing, but I had to keep the ball moving. And so I'd be like, all right, let's do it this way. If we're wrong, we can double back. I soon adopted the phrase, what do we have to lose? Okay, there's no downside to this, so let's try it. Or maybe the downside's limited. We can identify it quickly, so let's try it. Whether it be a new product or whether it just be hiring this person or whatever it might be, I always look at the downside and what's the risk. Because if it's minimal and you have the bandwidth and you have the people that really believe in it, let them do it.
Yeah, but this expectation of you to be the almighty, all-knowing.
Yeah, I think
you didn't feel that. That wasn't there. No, it really wasn't. There was lip service by some, was like, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir, but they never did it. I very few of them ever did it, and that's why they didn't last. So no, but you do see it. You do see it, but any top CEO can get that complex, or people can look at them that way if they're hugely successful. But I was an unknown entity coming in, and I figured I had to prove myself through some inclusion. But yeah, it was not easy in the first year or so. For 6 months especially, they didn't want me there. So I just had to do a lot of stuff myself. I had to write the business plan. I had to write the PR strategy. I had to fucking write the PR, my own press release announcing I'd come to the company. I mean, passive aggressive upon passive aggressive behavior. I've had the same. I had the same. I loved it because I knew. I told them I will be here longer than you. You can do this all as long as you want. I will outlast all of you, and I did. Because I was the one with the sword. I could.
Yeah. But luckily, that's 3 out of 150. So I felt pretty good. And it gave us the opportunity to promote some really smart guys. And if anyone hears this, you know who you are, right? To take these positions.
You
who
always
were
say,
unhappy.
if anyone hears this, I mean, this is a podcast with 1 million listeners, Jerry.
No, I mean, but it's the guy from Bruno, named Olda, who's still one of my best friends.
He's still listening, yeah.
He will be listening.
I saw him on the list.
Okay, cool. I'll send it to him.
Yeah. Anyway, you make money because you're a shareholder, the IPO, you make money, and you take some time off, but then you kind of go back to an old passion. That's the music, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the music was always there, but I guess when you're running a big multinational business, you don't have a lot of time to be playing and...
Not so much. Luckily, my CFO, John Little, was also a musician and had a band and has a band now. So we played together a little bit. Towards the end of the AVG years, we started playing together and doing stuff. But then after, when we'd left, then is when it really, then it kicked in. Then proper musicians.
But then you ditched the trumpet and you're only guitar.
Yeah, only guitar.
Trumpet hasn't touched your lips since.
I got a friend named Olli Torvinen who's a trumpet player, and he lives here in Prague. And so occasionally he might throw it in his bag. If you see a crazy guy at a festival or something playing the flugelhorn or the trumpet, that's him.
Okay.
So yeah, occasionally, but no, I can't play anything anymore on that. No, so it's all guitar. I'm actually a singer and a songwriter, and I play guitar. So I'm not a tremendous guitar player, but I write and I sing.
And this, let's say the outlet that is your primary musical outlet is Adams Traktor, the band that we mentioned in the beginning. And what's the purpose of Adams Traktor? Is it just you having fun? What's the goal here? Yeah,
so I think when I left AVG, you're just looking for what's the next thing. And so I became a venture partner at a venture capital fund, which I still am. And that's where I dedicate most of my time now. You could call it full-time, actually, if you look at the number of hours a week I put in, but there's a lot of hours in a week, right, between things. So, but this was before that, before I became a full-time partner, is when Adams Traktor started. And that was to just conquer a different mountain. So I had the basic skills. I'm musically inclined, and I always wanted to do it. And so I thought, well, this is going to take a long time, right? To play guitar better, to write songs. I'd never written songs before, and to learn how to sing properly. So I could sing a little bit, But I was very lucky and found a woman here in the Czech Republic who is a professional voice coach. She's a great singer. She's been a performer. So, she takes it from experience. So 3 years of twice a week and then practicing almost every day. I could, let other people decide if I can sing or not. I'm not going to say I can sing. I still hate to listen to my own music.
I hate listening to my own podcast.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So some people like it. I met a guy here through Johanna, the voice instructor, who named Gregory Darling, and he's a saint of a guy. He's been a musician all of his life, quite famous. He's Billboard Top 20 artist. He lives here in Prague, originally from LA. And so he came to a concert I did threw together a few guys, and we completely sucked. It played at Slamnik. My drummer didn't practice. My bass player didn't practice. Nobody gave a shit. So I basically just said, okay, guys, I just cranked up the electric guitar and screamed my lungs out for, half an hour. He was like, there's some pretty cool stuff there. I can work with this.
And these were your original songs that you were playing there. Okay.
Yeah. And so Gregory said, yeah, I can work with these. Some are good, some aren't so good, but I can work with this. Let's do the album. And so then it was, a year of studio time on and off in his studio. Pretty condensed, but it's one thing to lay down the tracks, and then it's another thing to mix them. It's a long process. And so he pulled together a good team of guys that like the music, and because we do the basic recordings and we'd send it out, see who might bite in his network. And in his network, it was Fernando Sanders, who is a accomplished musician on his own on Sony Records, and he's played with everyone from Slash, David Bowie, you name it. He's played.
What does he play? What
bass? Bass, and his most recent gig was he was the bass player for Lou Reed before he died. I think 6 or 7 years, but he lives in Ostrava,
okay,
which is of all crazy things. He has a son in
that's
Budapest,
a city in the
eastern part of the country. Yeah. So he calls that home. American guy, but just unbelievable bass player. Maybe it's him, Bootsy Collins, and that's it. I mean, there's a shitload, but in my mind, those are the top 2 bass players on the planet. So he was kind enough to come to Prague and lay down the bass tracks for the songs, and then a gentleman named Manny Elias, who is the original founding drummer for a band called Tears for Fears, right?
Yeah, I know that.
Who doesn't know Tears for Fears, right? Think of their first 2 albums. That's Manny. Those are his grooves, right? So, and he is a saint of a guy, and he just is so talented. He claims he never practices, and I believe he doesn't, but he's so damn good. Like, he'd come in, and 3 takes, he'd have the whole drum track down. One song, he did it in 1 take. Just he, at home he'd prepare, he'd have it in his mind, and he just so amazing, And so those are the musicians I'm surrounded by, and one local guy as well, who I don't want to
discredit.
Olda Krejcevic, who is the guitarist for the band Monkey Business.
Yeah, I had the singer from Monkey Business here, Tonya Graves.
Oh, Tonya Graves.
Yeah, she was here.
Super.
My earlier episode.
Yeah. So Olda, and he is such a talented guitarist. Like, there's nothing he can't play, and his creativity. Like, on some of these songs, it goes so just wackadoodle. Like his solos or his guitar riffs, it's just you get into the groove of the music, and some of the stuff he creates is like epic. I'm still challenging him now to try to play it again. Because if we'd like to do a concert possibly in the next couple months. I'm like, but you got to play it like you played it on the record. And he's like, oh, you got to be kidding me.
He needs to learn his own riffs.
His own riffs. He's looking at me going, I don't really quite remember. But again, insanely talented guitarist. Probably the top guitarist in the country by far. Super talent. So
and then when you put those guys together, a rhythm guitarist and a singer in the band.
Yeah, that's me. That's me. Yeah, that's me. But I'm the least talented guy in the group. But
but you're the one that made it happen. I mean, you brought it all together. You made the songs.
I wrote the songs. I sing the songs. But Gregory Darling, I got to give him a truckload of credit because he's also the producer.
Yeah. And
so if you go, I mean, it's on Instagram or Facebook. It's just Adams Traktor, but Traktor is spelled with a K.
Yeah.
Traktor.
It's the Icelandic version of the word tractor.
Perfect. I knew that. That's what Gunnar told me.
Yeah.
And also YouTube, all the videos. Initially, when I came out, we signed with Darkspark Music, which is a subsidiary of Sony Music. After the first 4 singles, we decided to part ways amicably. It was great. Loved working with them. But I don't have the intent to become a rock star. And if I don't, then they don't want to, they're like, well, why? Then why am I promoting you? But they put a lot of muscle behind it, and they promoted it, especially in the US. So there's, hundreds of thousands of views of the videos, and Instagram's doing quite well and all that. But that's because you had a professional label for a while. And then we just kind of said, well, maybe we'll come back around someday, but right now let's put that on hold just because our goals weren't aligned.
But just let's now get back a little bit. So what if you were to describe, I mean, I've heard some of your, I actually only heard 3 songs. I haven't heard 4 songs.
There's 4. We had a song called Divided, was released about a month ago. Yeah, there's 12 tracks that are all done and mastered.
Yeah, and so if you were to describe this music, I mean, what would be is it? I mean, I know it's a very much of a cliche to try to categorize music into something, but
yeah, I mean, but some you can say it's just pure rock, or it's pure Seattle sound / grunge, but it's not. The problem is, or the good thing is like, I'm a little bit over 50 years old, and the genres that I've lived through
are great.
There's so many influences. So you can hear a lot of those in the music. Some of, I'll have people say, well, you sound like Eddie Vedder. I get that a lot. You sound like Eddie Vedder a lot, but not like Eddie Vedder, but just like if you look at Chris Cornell, Lane Staley, Eddie Vedder, those are my heroes, right? So you're going to be influenced by them, but I definitely don't sound like them. But at the end of the day, there's influences, and then there's funk, there's soul, there's that whole new wave movement. You got the Smiths, you got Duran Duran, you got those synths, and I love 9 Inch Nails. I mean, Trent Reznor's a god in my book, right? So those so the songs are all over the shop, and sometimes even in one song, it's all over the shop, like 3 different genres, but not ridiculously like what are these guys thinking? But you'll feel. And when you put like Fernando's bass line under some of it, it takes it to a whole different place, right? And same with Manny's drumming. So my job was to lay down tracks with a good groove. Because I'd play it on acoustic guitar, do the voice, and we do it to a metronome, so it's perfect. And then they would come in, and we'd chat about it, and then they'd just go to work, right? So I'd be sitting there with Fernando. He'd play, what about this? Oh, that's great. Give me something else. Do this, and then he'd be like, and I just keep doing that with them and stuff. And we'd be playing, and we were vibing a lot. And the most magical things came out from him. And same with Manny. Like we'd be just talk through it. He'd be like, okay, I can play that a fraction of a second slower. So it just drags a little bit. Let me try that. And we'd be like, try it. And then I didn't even know that existed. I didn't know a drummer could strike, he can hit right on the beat or slightly ahead, slightly behind by just millimeters of a second. And it changes the whole feel of the song. And he was doing that and stuff. So I'm like, okay, these are pros. These are guys who really definitely know a lot more than I do. Right. But that's where the magic happened. So at first I felt like I need to control it. No, this is the way the song was written. No, we got to play it like this. I just gave it up. I was like, no, this is the creation. I laid down the basics, and now it's going to take on a life of its own. So some of them went harder. Some of them went softer. Some of them turned into a pop song, which I still don't like so much, but only one got into the pop category, right? But the rest are all influenced by that Seattle sound and even a little bit of 80s, because we also added the keyboards in some places too.
And what are the lyrics about? I mean, what are you singing about?
Everything.
I mean, because you write the songs and the lyrics, right?
Yeah. So like one of the most popular was a song called Time to Wake Up, and that pretty much says it all. So it was released during the election period. I was hoping Biden would pick it up and make it as, his theme song. Didn't really happen. Still could. Next time around.
I'm not sure we'll get 4 more years of Biden. I think he's too old.
That could be. But it just talks about, it's time to wake up. Look at things. If you see the video on YouTube, you'll see it's all laid out there because you can see it through the visuals. But, the changes that are going on in the earth, the politics, all the upheaval, the climate change, you name it, all these things, racism, blah, 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 right? All the things that we've encountered so heavily over the last 5 years, it's all there. So it's time to wake up, right? Look differently. It's very simple, acoustic, a little bit Mad Season-esque, if you remember Mad Season.
Yeah.
And the others ones, Nothing is a song that's just written about kind of nothing. And it starts out really slow, mellow guitar, and then it just goes apeshit Nirvana chorus. You know, so the ups and downs. That's something I learned from Kurt Cobain, loud and louder, right? So dynamics.
Does this come easily to you? I mean, like, because what you said before, I mean, like, you were not a great guitar player when you were a teenager, and then you have a career in mobile and antivirus and NASDAQ listing, and then, you get out of that machine somehow.
Yeah.
It spits you out, still alive. And then you go in, okay, I need to learn the guitar. I need to learn to sing. I have never written a song. I mean, and here you are. You have 12 tracks recorded with world-known musicians.
Yeah.
Was it easy?
No, but it's just like you have to be a little fearless. Like, for me, this was a huge mountain to climb. Can I do this? I don't know. Do I have the inclination to do it? Yes. Do I have the talent? I don't know. I guess I'm going to have to find out. And the fear of failure, which is what drives a lot of entrepreneurs, just that pure fear of failure is what drives you to be successful. And so it took me 4 years before I could sit in a studio. And then sitting in the studio was a complete learning experience. Getting all mic'd up, having to sing in front of the mic, having to, I do some of the guitar parts as well. Well, that means absolute perfection on that song. Like, and Gregory was like, do it again. Do it again. Yeah, nice try. Do it again. I heard that one string. Do it again. Do it again. Like 50 takes sometimes to get one, right? Because I'm not a studio guitarist. Although will come in and riff it out in 3 tries. But so that learning experience, plus the singing and the practicing, because there's time in the studio, but then there's practice outside of the studio. So all those things, I just look at it like I needed a really big mountain to climb because my whole life was consumed by AVG, right? I had a family and I still had time for them and everything. And then coming out, I had more time for the family, right? But I still had more free time than I knew what to do with, but I'm never bored. So I'm like, well, I always want to do this. I'm taking it on. And that turned into a 40-hour-a-week job doing all those things. Maybe not quite that much, but you know what I mean? So I just always figured no matter where you are or what stage you're at in your life, you need to have some big mountain you're climbing and something you're going to conquer, something you know is going to take a long time. And you may or may not be successful, right? And that keeps it going. And so I'm not going to say I'm a successful singer and songwriter. If people like my songs, great. I hope they do. Yeah,
I read some review that somebody wrote that music execs in the US should have a big boner in their pants wanting to sign Adams Traktor on their label. Yeah. I mean, people like this. There's been a lot of positive...
Yeah, and we got a lot of press coverage. We still do get whenever we release a single, we get a fair amount of press. And
is that something that you learned from the tech industry? Because what you're doing is that you're releasing it song by song by song. You're not
and doing a lot of promotion, doing the video.
Song.
Ton of promotion, connecting with the first few songs got a lot of coverage in the press. And a lot of interviews with the band and everybody. And so we keep going back to those same, because they like us. So, and then we add a couple every time we release a single. So pretty soon you have, like on average, it was like 25 articles written, one by Vogue magazine even, here locally. So the Czech version of Vogue. Thank you, Michaela, for that. So you just keep grinding. And every song you hit new audiences. You do it on social, you do it on YouTube, you do it on SoundCloud, you do it through PR. Thinking about collaborating with other musicians also that have a different audience. And then I've got a part-time student that works half an hour every day just on Instagram and Facebook, just kind of cruising around looking for cool people that I can connect with and have a conversation with. And if we jive, then we follow each other and maybe we'll do something in collaboration in the future. So just kind of broadening the network.
The shape of regret.
But this is very much, this is very much a business guy, because if yeah, well, if I probably might do the same. But let's say that if
Yeah.
you would have done this when you were 17, you
Yeah.
would just put the fucking album out there,
Wait.
and then wait.
Yes.
But now you have a more structured approach, and you know what you're going for. But by the way, we're playing the music on this. You're gonna send me the files.
Yeah, I'll send you the MP3s.
Then what? So you said, okay, we're gonna play live, and then are you gonna make another album?
Yeah.
Will it be with
This
the
will
same
now be.
crew?
Yeah. This will be lifelong now until they tell me to FO. Right.
Okay.
So, yeah, we'll continue to do this. We really like the first album, the songs. The album is called Quench by Adams Traktor. Manny is the one who came up with the name at a barbecue. It was like, hey, what are we going to call the album? Manny just goes, Quench. Yeah, that's it. Okay, I'll give you credit. Awesome. Next subject. So almost as easy as the band was named, right?
Yeah.
We had the name of the album. But music is a lifelong endeavor. I can always become a better singer. I can always become a better songwriter. I could learn a new instrument, which I don't. One thing in this industry, it's so specialized. Like for all us, I can do the production. No, you can't. Then when you see professionals, no, I can't. Right? That's a lifelong journey. The sound guys, lifelong journey. Guitar players, lifelong journey. So if you're gonna pick which one you want to do and do it really fucking well, right? And that's it. And dedicate your time. And that's songwriting and singing. I play guitar to write songs, and then it's sometimes on the album as well. And now I'll have to do it in live performance. But then live performances is a whole nother. I perform live with various bands 5 times. Now, if I get on stage with these guys and draw a proper audience, we got to practice.
Yeah.
We got to come on stage and blow their doors off. This isn't going to be a little pub where you just kind of dork around and get off and have a couple pivos, right? So,
But it must be also what you were describing. I mean, with the producer Gregory, it's your songs, it's your ideas, it's your lyrics, it's your music, it's your project. I mean, you're the one that you're the centerpiece of this project. I mean, obviously surrounded.
All the copyright rights belong to me.
Yeah, and but isn't it difficult to then sit there in a I don't know, in a studio, and then there's a guy that just tells you do it again. I mean, is there never at this point for you to say fuck you? It's my project. I'm happy with it. This is gonna stay on the tape.
I didn't try that approach. We came close a couple of times. Like, come on, man. But the thing is, you got to find the producer that you jive with, and we're the same age, and we grew up in the same experience. We have the same passions, the same bands, and so our ideas are really
synced.
We're synced. If you get a producer that sees your night and day, it's going to be torture. After the first 2 songs, I realized, okay, we're in sync here. We're going to debate a few things, get confused over this or that, but overall, the end product is going to be, we're both going to be really happy. Because he'd add something or he'd throw something, I think we need this or that, and I'd come back and go, oh my God, it's so much better now. Right? So what you pray is that the opposite doesn't happen. Like the producer will ding around with it overnight and come back and you're like, oh, I hate it now.
And
that never happened.
There's no fear that you lose this you part of it. Do you know what I mean? Because you're giving away something that you created to someone to work on it, improve it, and like you're saying, the bass player is coming off with the bass line, and
it's ridiculous.
And it doesn't feel like, I don't know, that you're losing any control that you want to keep.
Well, you absolutely are, but you have to be willing to give it away. Because once you let Fernando go to town and let Manny go to town and let Gregory, who also did the keyboards, then it becomes your project as a team. Adams Traktor is a music project. Manny is not a member of my band, right? Adams Traktor is me. But these are projects that they choose to work on, and they can work on anything they want. And if they choose to work with me, I'm flattered and I'm thankful. I'm grateful. And if they choose to come back and work with me again, I'm even more thankful, right? Like, so, like Manny's not going to fly from the UK every month and play a concert. Fernando's traveling the world already, touring. So we agree, okay, this coming summer, we're going to take 10 days in my house and we're going to rig it all up like a music studio. and we're going to record the next album
Where
together.
will your family be? While
I'm going to have to send them somewhere,
Yeah.
Greece or Italy or something.
the band is coming.
The band is going. We're already
Family has to
gearing it
leave.
all up because I have a studio in the house, but we're going to use different rooms, different things. We're going to experiment like they did in the old days. The Stones would take a year to do an album, right? Well, we're going to do it in 2
I
weeks.
actually wanted to ask you that because you mentioned that earlier when you were talking about the DJing, about the when you were using the two turntables to get them to sync. You know?
Yeah.
Did you use a lot of the old ways? I mean, the analog technology now when you were recording, or how?
Ah, that's interesting. The Gregory's theory is record it the way you want it to sound on the album. So don't just do a guitar riff and then plug it in and manipulate it with a bunch of software. So it's kind of old school.
Find the sound that you want and then record.
Yeah, and it's 98% hardware.
Uh-huh.
So between his studio and mine, we combined a lot of our hardware, and we create a good stack. And so he has a separate room in his studio where those amps, I used a Vox and an Orange amp mainly on these tracks, and they're just cranked.
Mm-hmm.
They're like on stage cranked and getting the most out of them. So you can't even be in the same room, otherwise you'd be deaf.
Mm-hmm.
So we're like, yep, that'll do. Nope. And so 40 times back and forth to the rooms. Same with drums. The drums are, a whole big set, all mic'd up by a professional sound engineer. And
so it's kind of analog in a way.
It is analog. Yeah. It's old school. We didn't use tape. We still recorded it into the
hard drive,
electronic to a hard drive. We're not David Grohl just yet. So it was all that way. And there, in certain, if we wanted a certain effect or something, you can manipulate. But drums, guitar, and stuff like that, the hard stuff, my voice, stuff, it's all raw.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah, but you always put a little compression, a little echo on stuff. That's normal. That's what that's even back then.
Yeah, I will even do that on this. I'll put some compression on this podcast. Everything needs a little bit too. So I'm just curious. I mean, like, your dad didn't really speak to you when you were a DJ. It wasn't really a topic that was discussed. And then I guess he was happy with you when you were a big-ass CEO and doing all these businesses. And now you're back to music. Has he stopped talking to you?
No, he hasn't. That's an interesting question, though. Yeah, okay. Surprise. But no, I mean, he was never not supportive. He just, if he didn't think it was the course I should be taking, then he wasn't overly joyful about it, right?
Yeah.
But, now we're both older. We can sit down and have a laugh and have a nice conversation. And I try to see him at least once or twice a year, and, it's, plus he's keeping track of his grandkids and all that stuff. So yeah, no, I think he's pretty proud of me and, as proud as I am of him, really.
But I think, it's a great story in a way that, you definitely go an alternative route. I mean, like most people that would have, I think, if you would go over the stock exchange listings in the US or the IPOs that have been in the US, you won't find someone with a college degree in hospitality and gastro that went that way. And now, I mean, it's the fairy tale that I'm painting here is that, you did all this hard work, you went in the hard way, and you learned on the go, but now you're kind of enjoying the rewards. I mean, you financially and are capable of putting focus onto something that actually you really, really like.
Yeah.
And you're, I mean, it's a happy ending, because a lot of people, this business environment doesn't really, it chews them up and kind of, you don't get out of there somehow,
Yeah. Well, and it really did. It takes your heart and soul. But you have to love it. And so for me, this starting companies, growing with them, it's the only way I could become a founder or CEO. There's no way I could work for IBM and get the top job. Right? I don't have the right credentials, number one. Number two, I could work really hard. I could probably get fairly far up the food chain, but I'm never going to be the boss, and nor do I want to. I don't want to be a part of a 40,000 person organization with no influence and no quick decision making and the ability to move and, have fun and create. Right? And they do great things for the world, but it's just not something I can do. And so that's what's really important. And even today, there was a period where it was super focused, the music, for like 3 or 4 years. And now I've got to a certain level where I can maintain it and I can still do it, like we've talked about, but it's no longer a full-time gig, because I'm a partner in a venture firm. I sit on 4 boards for technology companies, et cetera. So those take a lot of my time, my normal time now too. But it's, I guess it's like you're dropping all the stereotypes around what should a businessman be? What should a musician be? What should, a guy who's got 1 million followers on a podcast, what should he be or she be, right? And I like breaking those stereotypes because the world's just not made up the way it used to be. Well, you're a doctor, you're a lawyer, you're an engineer, you're a musician, right? And now you can be all those things, right? And so I've always defied that being put in a box. When at AVG, when people are like, what, you used to be a DJ? Yeah. Oh, no, you didn't. So I'd go up at the club and I'd say, give me 10 minutes. I will
DJ the shit out of this
and
here.
So like, what? Okay, he was. I believe you now, right? But now it's all changed. So I had to relearn. So I still, even in my studio downstairs, I still have 2 1200s, a mixing board, and I've also got the DJ, a Pioneer DJ electronic with shitloads of electronic dance music, that I can plug and play, and so I can do both now. But I had to relearn it because I was so used to dealing with vinyl, which I still love, but it's just a lot harder. Now today, anyone can be a DJ in 20 seconds. Doesn't mean they can be a good DJ, because still then it's down to how you mix and the music choices. Right? You still have to be, still have to be amazing at that, but it's just really easy to mix now.
But do you think you would do you see yourself going into a full-time CEO job in a company again? Or are you content where you are now?
For a while I did. And I still get occasional offers from recruiters and stuff. Hey, you should look at this. You should look at that. But I think now I'm fully committed to the venture fund and my family and music. So the quality of life, because I still don't go into an office every day. I still get to meet really interesting technology companies and help them. I still get to play music. I still get to drive my kids to school.
Yeah, you're more in charge of how you spend your time.
Yeah. So you really, that quality of life, and I loved every minute of being on an airplane all the time and running AVG. But that was a time and a place, right? And so now it'd be really hard for me to go back. Plus I made commitments to the venture fund now that I'm a full-time partner. I got to put in the hours, but having outside interests, that makes you more interesting. That means you have a better view of the world. That means you'll maybe find better companies to invest in. So it all comes together. That fabric weaves all together, but it isn't a predefined method, right?
I mean, it's just often that often when someone has stayed in this role in management for a long time, it sort of absorbs who you are somehow.
That is who you are then.
Yeah,
lots of times.
And it's often hard to find the identity when you come out of it or so on. And it's I don't know how much of it is from your own definition of who you are, or it's the environment that expects you to be something that you have always been towards them somehow.
Yeah. I don't know. I think a lot, in fact, the majority of people, they find something that they like and then they pursue it, because it takes a long time to be good at something, whether that's sales, management, whatever it is. So that's what they do. But I just think life's too short. So I always try to accelerate my learning so I can be good at something faster, even if it takes years. Getting coaches, getting teachers, having good mentors around me, especially in business, to help me learn. Because I do believe you need to get there faster and make less mistakes. And so you need other people around you to help you do that. It's totally selfish, but it's part of my recipe for success. Is I never think it's about me. I'm like, it's selfish because I want to, like I said, get there faster and make less mistakes, which just makes me look good. It makes me more money. It gives me more free time to spend doing this or this or this for my family, right? So it's just a method I always use, and it works. You get more, because I could have no job and I could still be 100% busy with all the other things.
All the other things that you're doing, and that's the and I think also that's a relatively new thing. I mean, I don't think that our society wouldn't necessarily have approved of something like that. I don't know, 40 years ago or 30 years ago. Like, oh, what does he do? Yeah, he's just playing music in his basement. Oh, something wrong with him. Can someone call the police or the child services or something? There's something wrong.
Doesn't he have a job?
Yeah. I wanted to. You told me once that you are involved in something. We're about to finish this. I think you're involved in something called Hana Life. And I just wanted to mention it because we touched on it a little bit earlier about the medical industry.
Yeah.
So these are some. It's a health project, right?
Yeah, it's a project founded by a friend of mine, Joel Einhorn, and so I got to give him most of the credit. But we joined forces because of his passion for health and athletics, and consuming the right things, and my business knowledge. And also I have a similar, I'm a cyclist. I like to stay fit. I do something every day, in that regard. And so when we came together, Joel had been to India to basically correct a broken shoulder and headaches and a whole bunch of things after a bike crash. And he got turned on to the world of Ayurveda, and it just stuck. They helped him. And he's completely 100% recovered. And now we're running Hana. We have been for 5 years. And so we have 7 products on the market, which are all sourced from India and Bhutan. And you got to remember that when they take herbs and spices and they mix them together, it's medicinal, right? So it's pretty serious. Whereas here, they're just food supplements.
Yeah.
It's turmeric, ashwagandha, mix this, mix that. Take some turmeric, mix it with some black pepper, and you got a different product. Okay, that's for this. So they all have specific purposes. And so for us, we look for these ancient remedies and things that have only used in certain parts of the world, or they're even dying off. And we try to then bring them into the mainstream. And so we have 7 products. It's called Hana Life, HANAHLIFE.com. And our products there are just unbelievable high quality, because what we do is we know where everything is sourced, and everything is wild harvested from the jungles by local, harvesters and farmers and stuff. We know them. So we really control the supply chain. And then we use ancient production methods, so it preserves all the nutrients and
all
everything, all the qualities. And so when you do that with these herbs and spices and things that we mix together, you feel it. Like you're more alert. You're better on the bike. You'd have to go read the reviews from our customers. But
what kind of ailments or what are these? I mean, if you take 2 or 3 out of those 7 products, I mean, what is this?
Generally, what our main core focus was initially with the flagship product Hana 1 was to boost your immune system. And what we later learned is that when you really do that successfully, meaning boost your immune system, then your oxygen utilization in your body improves, your mental clarity improves, you're less tired, you're definitely stronger during the workout, especially if it's cardio. You recover quicker both during the workout and after the workout. Like I went from, that 2 o'clock brain fog, sitting at your desk, whatever, to nothing. And, when I was at home, I'd be taking like a 15-minute power nap in the afternoon. Couldn't do it if I tried now. Because what these herbs do is it helps you kind of turn back the clock of time. And
you want to take this?
And so no, we can leave it. And so it just makes your body stronger. It's not like these chemicals or these herbs you have to take them every day. It's just helping your own immune system work more efficiently. So like I'll take some of these herbs, especially the core product, for 6 months, and then I come off it for a month. I feel no difference. And then I start to feel a little degradation.
And then you start again.
And then I start again.
Yeah.
And so...
And where can I buy
really
this?
Where can I buy it? You can only buy it. That's the problem. You can buy it here, but the customs just kills you. So really, it's only in the U.S. right now.
Okay. But 60% of my listeners are in the U.S. I have no fucking clue why, but they are there.
You're interesting. You're different. You're not the same old, same old thing.
Or just there's the guys that I'm paying for downloading on the server farm. They're stationed in the U.S.
Hey, whatever works.
Yeah. So they can buy it hanalive.com in the U.S. And I'm what I like about this is that, and it's but that's a whole different dialogue though. But I mean, do you think that these kind of products are going to have a comeback? Because the reason I wanted to talk about this is that the medical industry. I mean, it's a fucking huge industry.
$74 billion or something just in food supplements.
Yeah, and then we have all this stuff that has worked for us for, I don't know, 100,000 years, 200,000 years, 20,000 years, 50,000 years, whatever.
Some of the recipes we use are 2,500 years old.
Yeah. But these are people that are called snake oil salespeople today, you know, like the ones that are actually selling the natural stuff. But do you think that this is, now you're a successful businessman, you know everything. Do you see a trend? Do you think natural remedies are coming stronger? Definitely.
People are more aware of what they put into their body. They're looking for supplementation because also too, you know, we're over farming the planet. So the nutrients that are coming from the soil into the plants that we eat and into the animals, if you eat meat, it doesn't have the same impact. So supplements do matter. And if you look at like India, Bhutan, China, Japan, these remedies have been around for thousands of years and they're still around because they work. Right. So just because.
And also those markets can't afford traditional medicine in the same. I mean, you know, one of those markets are not as interesting for medical companies.
But they still try. Like our Dr. Venugopal, who's the guy that we cooperate in India, he said like his nieces and nephews, they just want to go eat a Snickers bar. And they're moving away from these traditions and they're getting insanely unhealthy. And it's killing him. He has to force them to eat these remedies and do these things naturally, normally like they used to do when he was a kid. He's 78 years old. And his face and his beard look like he's 70 years old.
I think I saw him on your homepage.
Yeah, but his body looks like it's like 30. And he's flexible and he's like, okay, so this shit works, right? He takes care and he eats the right stuff. And it has an impact on your body and your health.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I was curious about this when I saw this, just because, I think like this, the whole... I think we're going in the wrong way with both what we eat and what we use as medicine and treatments, and we don't really look for the root. We actually look for the symptoms and so on.
But they just treat the symptoms.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to get you again to talk because I really want to talk to you about cybersecurity, tracking, and privacy because I know that's a topic. You wrote books on this, and
that's
that's
my
a
passion
topic.
as well.
Yeah. And when we had coffee the other day, and then you told me that Google knows when I go to the toilet. And I'm curious to expand on that a little bit. I wonder if it's in 15 years they know what ended up in the toilet, probably.
Oh, yeah. The future of privacy or anti-privacy and cybersecurity, they're all intertwined.
Yeah.
And the stories I can tell, and I'm happy to tell some of them.
Yeah.
For sure.
Okay, so the people who are listening want to know more. So that's Adams Traktor with a K.
Yep. One word. Well, everything's one word on Instagram.
And
2 words normally.
And there is a Facebook page as well, right?
There's YouTube, Facebook, SoundCloud, and Instagram. I mainly post on Instagram.
Yeah, and I'll put links to all of this in the episode description. So wherever you're listening, then you can find that in the episode.
Yeah, it's on, and all the songs are on Spotify.
Yeah. When is the next one released?
October 26th.
Okay, that's probably before we publish this episode.
Okay.
It could be. I'm not sure. I'm recording a little bit of a stock. I'm building stock.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
No, that's great.
HannaLife.com.
HannaLife.com. If you're in the U.S., then just, it's worth checking out.
Yeah.
At least have a look. You know?
And anything else we are promoting here or talking about?
No, I didn't expect to promote anything. Actually, I thought this was just a fun conversation around diversity and doing funny things and what you can accomplish in your life, you know.
It's always good to tell people where to know more, you know. Because if anyone is still listening now 2 hours and 10 minutes after we started talking, then they possibly would want to know more, you know.
Yeah, that's
the thing. That's a sign, you know.
Yeah.
Guys, Facebook page, The Bunker, How the Hell Did We End Up Here? I'm actually thinking about rebranding the podcast. But yeah, we'll remain. The name will remain more or less the same, but might be different when you hear this. Bunker
But
Prague.
if you've built a brand and people know it,
Yeah,
why change it?
It's a very long name. The Bunker. How the hell did we end up here? It's
I like it.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I will see. I'm thinking about this. There's a lot of thinking going on, and Instagram. That's Bunker Prague, and YouTube channel The Bunker. How the hell did they end up here? That's amazing still photos of me and my visitors and guests with the beautiful soundtrack of the podcast on top. It's age restricted because I had a twerker on. And YouTube didn't want twerking to be on YouTube, so they age restricted the whole channel. So if you have kids, don't show them my podcast.
Just that one.
Yeah, and the whole channel was actually blocked into an age restricted channel.
What if you take that one down?
Yeah, I don't want to take that down. It's a great episode, and the girl has
So-
a channel herself with thousands of followers, and that's fine. But my one fucking episode, I don't know, someone must have reported it or something. I don't know. It's a weird thing. I hate this, but I hate how these companies can just make a decision like this, and when you want to ask them why, you get a robot.
Can't get anybody.
Yeah. It's awful, and it means that you actually start really thinking about what you say. You modify your own words.
Yeah.
And it's stupid, you know.
Yeah, we'll talk about it more later. But it is when you're being trained to behave a certain way, to do certain things and not other things, so you can still be on their platform.
Yeah.
So it's training you.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And
There's
I
many layers of that.
refuse to be trained, and I know you're the same.
I have similar stories.
Yeah.
Where I got banned from Instagram for saying Zuckerberg equals the devil, and they found it. It was just in a comment. And they blocked me for 3 days and said, "Don't do that again."
Okay,
that's censorship.
Thanks for
that's
having
complete censorship.
Thanks for having my podcast blacklisted.
You can take that.
Zuckerberg is great. JR, thanks for coming.